Good afternoon. We'll go ahead and call the meeting, a special meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District on Wednesday, April 13th, 2016. Director Hernandez.
Yes, sir.
Will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Happily. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Diana, can we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Oliver?
Here.
Dr. Evans will be mentally absent. Dr. Hernandez?
Here.
Dr. Martin?
Here.
Dr. Snow?
Here.
Thank you.
And we'll just let the record reflect that there had been some discussion pertaining to Director Evans calling in, but she has chosen not to, so there will be no telephone call as well.
Did she send in any questions or anything?
Not to me,
No.
did she? No. Okay. Oral communications, I do not see anybody out there, so we'll carry on. And our first action item, 1.1, is board interviews and selection of recruitment firm. Any further discussion before we go grab our first applicant?
No,
Speak now.
not for me.
Okay. Cool. You know what? While she's doing that, can I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Sorry, Dan.
Maybe we should have hired a him instead of cats to put together better.
Don't get me started. I had let that one go.
Hey, a little salt may be good.
Hi, Gary.
Good morning.
Morning.
Actually, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Morning to me, like, got a 6 o'clock flight. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, take your time. Do we have any water for Gary or anything? You want water, scotch?
Probably walk.
Okay.
This time of the day, anyway.
We have desal, like some desal.
So are we set up for PowerPoint here?
Yes, we have a flash drive. So you can go ahead and start it.
I will.
Diane, did you just say flop drive?
Flash drive.
Oh, I thought you said flop drive. I was
No,
gonna say.
flash- I probably said it.
There's one in there?
Flash drive. I didn't know.
I'm gonna take it
You
out.
still got a floppy disk somewhere hanging around? Oh, floppy disk here.
Yeah.
This actually is, yeah, you can take this out, it's for the mouse, if you wanted to use the mouse, but otherwise you can just use it. Yeah, okay.
And we also have screens right in front of us too, so.
Okay, great.
Just so you know.
We'll try and get this all the way out, slide through. That's what I want to do. Okay, I think I'm set now.
Okay,
Slide
well,
that out.
before you get started, Gary, just thank you for coming out and answering our RFP for, and I think you know why you're here. We're looking for a recruiting firm to help us select a new general manager.
Absolutely.
We're gonna be going through this process a few different times today with different firms, so if we could just, it's not really formal, but it's some structure, maybe presentation 20 to 30 minutes, and then leave the rest of the time for some Q&A and some discussion with you?
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. And it's all yours.
I know that PowerPoints are hard to follow sometimes, so I made you guys a copy.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, John.
Thank you, how you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Is there someone at the conference again?
she actually is not going to make it today. Yeah, we will, we will. Okay?
Great. I'm one of those people that can't see with my glasses on up close, so I'm gonna enter the real quick. Do this all at once. All right. Good afternoon. And is this on?
Yep.
Okay, great. My name is Gary Peterson. I'm a senior consultant at Ralph Anderson Associates. I want to thank you for the invitation to be here, to present to you today. If our firm's selected, I'll be the project manager on this search assignment. Okay. Our understanding of the district and the assignment in this particular case, the district's been around for nearly 60 years and serves almost 100,000 people with 45 square mile radius in North San Diego County. We know you're committed to providing exceptional, sustainable services at the lowest possible cost to the taxpayer and the ratepayer. In public service, you know, we're normally driven by our mission. And so that's why I'm calling out your mission, you know, to serve as the water and wastewater specialist, you know, for your constituents, and provide sustainable services through continuous improvement, efficiency, operations and service, and support operations through retraining, retaining knowledgeable and engaged staff, and providing support and being a good regional partner and being respected in the industry. Continuous outreach and education to the customer. Conservation is very important. I just saw an article in the paper about, they gave you guys accolades where your target went from 24% to 16%. So that's a good news for the district. We're aware of your facilities and what you guys offer and the infrastructure issues you may have. You know, we recognize that you guys are getting a lot of your water, or some of your water, at least 27%, from the Bud Lewis desalination plant. And you're recognized as a progressive water district. So about our firm, Ralph Anderson Associates brings significant experience to the search process, evaluation, and selection process for your next general manager. Our firm has conducted more than 4,000 searches since 1972, when the company was formed. As such, our executive recruitment techniques have been refined over the years and successfully used with hundreds of clients for more than 44 years. The firm's background in executive search and the desire to understand the board's specific needs, along with our ability to develop and execute a plan, makes us ideal to represent you and your interests. You know, we have a staff of 24 at our office, so we don't consider ourselves a big firm, but we are well-staffed. We have plenty of support staff. Our corporate offices are located in Rockland, which is just on the way up the hill to Tahoe, just outside of Sacramento. We not only do California searches, but we do national searches as well. And we do have significant experience in water and wastewater searches. For example, there's a listing of searches that have been done in water and wastewater area and utilities by our firm. You guys have that list, so you can use that at your leisure. And, sorry. And specific to water and wastewater, our firm has conducted, you know, as you can see, more than 50 searches for different positions and specifically more than 20 positions, or 20 searches for general manager positions. You know, consequently, our consultants have reviewed countless resumes, interviewed hundreds of candidates for general manager and director level positions. This translates to extensive experience. Not only are we getting information, you know, from the people we interview, we're learning from them because we're not all water and wastewater professionals. So this translates into experience for us. And while I know you guys want to interview candidates who are progressive, have outstanding leadership skills, experience working with boards, and whose values are aligned with your districts, we, as a firm, we can't presume to know exactly what particular issues the board wants the new general manager to assist them with. And so, let me take you through the process and get some clarity to that issue and let you know how we arrive at quality candidates. Our search process is tailored to fit the needs of our clients. Generally, there are 8 major areas, as you can see in front of you. Review project management, develop position profile, outreach and recruiting, candidate evaluation, review of candidates, and that's with the board. Interviews, and in some searches, there's a meet the candidates forum that we sponsor so that the prospective finalists meet the folks that they're going to work with. And some boards and city councils use that process to see if it's going to be a really good fit for the organization. And then, of course, then there's the final selection. So going into a little more detail on project review. If we're selected, I'll meet with the board in person and the appropriate district staff to discuss project management on the search. You know, we call this our kickoff meeting. This meeting includes a review of the work plan that you have in our proposal, any adjustments that the board wants to make, a review of the timeline, and to deal with any time constraints or timing issues that the board may have, since this is really your decision. So we leave that meeting with a clear understanding of who's doing what, what's going to happen, and when it's going to happen. Then we develop the position profile. And that involves the position profile for the general manager really is the guide for the entire search process. The development of the profile includes the collection of technical information about the position, as well as the recruitment criteria. So we work closely with the board, stakeholders, staff, when appropriate, to ensure the complete picture of the desired candidate pool is developed. Gaining that understanding and the specific objectives and priorities of the board is essential before we start the search process, because we want to know what the issues the board wants the candidate to deal with. So I would meet with the board individually to identify the candidate's desired skills and experience level, as well as the critical soft skills, temperament, personality, management philosophy, and other factors that help determine fit, and that's going to come from the board. Based on these discussions and the technical information, I'll draft a position profile and candidate profile. All of that information is incorporated into our brochures with great photographs that your staff will provide us, hopefully. The brochure is reviewed by the board and approved. If there are adjustments to be made, we make the adjustments, and then we send numerous copies to the district. We post the brochure and a link to the brochure on your website and our website, and it's used throughout the search process. It really is the basic placeholder for the recruitment. So then we go to outreach and recruiting. And this is one of the most important parts of the process, because you have to have good candidates, to get here for you guys to interview, to get a great selection. So, an outreach and advertising campaign is developed, with the board's input. I mean, we do have several entities we publish with and advertise with in water and wastewater searches. But we do review that with our clients and make a determination based on the needs of the client. You know, additionally, the full position profile is on our website. And we also have this internet link called Constant Contact. And you guys are familiar with Constant Contact? Okay, so we use that as well to bring in other candidates who might not see it on different advertised sites. Then we, and the Constant Contact provides a confidential method for candidates to get a hold of us about a particular opportunity without alerting their current employer, basically. So, I mean, it allows for a dialogue and to see if there's interest on both sides and whether it's a possibility. So candidate identification and evaluation. You know, we target those individuals who meet the established criteria from the brochure that we developed with the board. We also contact candidates directly and solicit their interest to be considered. Both outreach and recruiting results in applications and resumes from interested candidates. As we receive resumes, we acknowledge the candidates and advise them on the general timing of the search and the process. Then when evaluating the candidates is the next task we conduct. Screening. All the applicants are carefully reviewed. Those that meet the recruitment criteria and the minimum qualifications will be identified and subject to more detailed evaluation. You know, and we look at several factors. You know, we look at the professional experience, the size and complexity of the candidate's current organization as compared to the candidate profile. We want to make sure it's the right fit and they have the right skill set to come in here and be your general manager. We do a preliminary research and internet review to see what their internet profile looks like, their public persona, to make sure that there's an issue with them, that we can share that with the board at the appropriate time, and it'll be a time where you guys determine who you're going to interview, and that may be a factor in your determination. Then we conduct preliminary interviews via Skype on the top group of candidates that we identify. And these interviews are designed to gain information about fit, management style. That screening usually reduces the field of candidates, depending on the type of search, from 5 to 8 candidates. And then from that, we develop a search report. That search report is reviewed with the board, and we divide the candidates into 3 groups. Top candidates, candidates that meet the minimum qualifications, and then the third group is the candidates that lack the minimum qualifications. And usually you just get a list of those candidates. The other 2 groups, you get cover letters, resumes, and our evaluation of those candidates. And then that takes us to the selection process. And the final selection process and timing really depends on the desires of the district, how that's gonna take place. So normally, I coordinate that selection process for the final group, which includes handling logistical matters. So we will come, meet with the board, present the candidates to the board. So, which means it's a paper review. We'll sit down and discuss each candidate, and then we'll make recommendations on the top group, and then the board has the option of reviewing the second tier, moving people up, or people in the first tier, moving them down, and then deciding who we're actually going to interview. And then I work with the board. After that's completed, we get that final group. I work with the board or the appropriate staff to develop questions for the interviews. Then when we have that finalist, we conduct a deeper internet search, education background checks, verifications. We complete an interview booklet that's provided to the board in advance. And that interview booklet will contain the resumes, the questions, the procedure for conducting the interviews. And actually, I brought a couple samples. I think I have them with me. And these are from recent searches. Administrative Services Director, Justice Affairs, and that's kind of what the book looks like. So those are the candidate books, the interview books, I mean, sorry. So I attend those interviews and support the district throughout the selection process. That includes the initial orientation with the board, candidate introductions, and then facilitation of the discussion after the interviews have been completed. And then once we narrow it down further to either a candidate or two candidates that you want to bring back, we conduct DMV checks, wants and warrants, civil criminal litigation search, credit checks. These verifications will be, the results of the verifications are discussed with the district in advance so that there are no surprises. Then after the final decision is made, we're available to assist in negotiating compensation package with the prospective new hire. And after that occurs, we close out the search. The length of the search, 75 to 90 days, is standard from execution of the agreement to presenting candidates, having candidates in front of you. So, as a firm, we're here to add value to your organization. We have the experience and resources to conduct this search. We have national reach. We successfully placed diverse candidates since 1972. We're committed to excellence, client satisfaction. As you can see from our client list, we serve many customers and had repeat customers. We have the experience. Our consultants have hands-on experience in many different fields. While personally I don't have wastewater experience as working in wastewater or water, I have experience with people. I had 27 years in government. I was the chief of police for the city of Martinez for 4 years and worked my way up through the organization 26 and a half, 27 years. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Gary. We'll start down here on the right. You want to get us kicked off,
Oh, yeah,
Hernandez?
be happy to. Gary, also in the original RFQ, Heather's name was brought up. How does she interrelate with you during this search?
Great. That's a good question. So, many of you may know Heather. Do you know Heather Richler?
No, I
Okay.
just couldn't pronounce
So-
her last name,
okay.
so
So
I didn't want to embarrass myself.
Heather's the CEO of our company,
Mm-hmm.
and she does a lot of searches of national caliber. She's all over the country. She is a water and wastewater expert. I mean, she's done the majority of those searches that you saw. Heather's done the majority of those. So Heather has an extensive candidate network throughout the nation in water and wastewater. And she'll be assisting me in the candidate evaluation and candidate identification.
And then who else will be assisting you? Because I can't believe you're gonna be doing all this documentation and everything.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. So that staff of 24 of those 24 folks, only 6 of them are recruiters. We have a very confident support staff. The graphic designer does the brochure. We do the brochure in-house so that we can maintain quality control. The booklets that I gave you, we do those in-house. We print everything, we bind it. I don't, but our support staff does that, and they're very, very capable, very, very professional, very, very good work environment for those folks.
The RFQ indicated that we would ask a couple of meetings a month, attendance at the board for the duration. I think you have a 12-week program on yours. I can identify 3 of the site meetings here.
Right.
How would you explain any of the other anticipated meetings at the board?
Okay. I know you guys have asked for us to attend those board meetings, and what I would ask is during the timing section, the initial outset where we discuss timing, we try to schedule the process in conjunction with those meetings, so we don't have to make too many trips. Because if we make too many trips, it's going to be cost prohibitive to do the search.
And that was my next question. If during this timing phase, we determine that more than the 3 that you've outlined, or at least I can determine,
Right.
are going to be required, would that be an additional fee that you would be asking for?
It would. It would, actually. And I think it's listed, or should be listed in the proposal.
It's 1,500.
Is that the 1,500?
I believe it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's see.
I'm sorry, it's 12, it says $12.50 per trip.
Oh,
Um,
1250.
And what we've done in the past, is this issue is, this isn't a new issue for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive, but I mean,
15.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
Hotel,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
So we've mitigated this issue before by doing closed session teleconference. I mean, it's in
Mhm.
2016. I mean, we have the capabilities to do that type of stuff, and it's more cost effective for us, and we don't have to pass on the cost to the district.
Um,
Can I do a follow-up?
If you're
Oh, yes,
if
by
you're
all
amenable to that.
As long as we're there, a follow-up to that question. In your 1 to 8, then, you're saying that you would be here for number 1, which is the review project management. Then the next time we would see you is number 5, review of candidates.
Correct.
And then the third time we would see you is interviews or meet the well, I don't know
Interviews.
that I agree with meet the candidates, but. we'll do
And,
that.
yeah, then we may not do that. You would see us at interviews.
So those are the 3 times that we see you.
Right.
Basically, and that's what you find to be the norm.
That is standard.
yeah,
It really is.
Thank you. That was a follow-up.
yeah, perfect.
And-
Go ahead.
And I can add on to that, with the interviews, a lot of times what public entities will do is have the interviews, and instead of waiting 2 weeks to call candidates back, is have a discussion, call them back the next day. And in that case, that's still 1 trip. I stay for the duration. If it's a 2 or 3 day trip, it's fine. Doesn't matter. All right?
What distinguishes the differentiation between you and your other competitors?
Well, I gotta tell you, everyone's gonna use the same search process. This, PowerPoint where we talk about the different things we do, everyone does that. I mean, it's pretty standard. Some of the competitors actually started at our firm.
Of course.
Of course, and they went on, that's fine. What distinguishes us is our experience and our national reach. We're very concerned about our reputation in executive search. We've managed to keep, the Ralph Anderson name pure. I mean, Ralph, rest his soul, is no longer with us. But we do have a competent staff. We have experience, specifically water and wastewater. I mean, Heather Renschler, is the premier recruiter in that area. And sorry you guys get me, but I will have Heather right there shepherding me right through the entire process.
And how many other projects will you be working on during this 12-week period beside ours?
Okay. And when do we want to start the project?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. The short answer is five.
Yeah,
Five of the projects.
Five of-
And 3 of them are coming to a conclusion within the next 3 or 4 weeks. So, and usually, the project review and develop the profile can be done in one trip, and I would want to do that immediately,
Mhm.
so that we could develop the position profile, design, and get the brochure approved. Usually that process takes 2 weeks. And then we do the advertising strategy, get everything advertised, and at that point, we're just doing outreach.
Well, then towards that end, and I might as well ask the question relative to, would you be available for a April 21st kickoff meeting,
What time?
4 PM?
I would not be. I'm in Oxnard doing their chief financial officer search. That's my interviews. Already got it scheduled.
Would you be available any other time during that day?
Yes, I could come down in the morning.
Just asking, if
Yep.
we haven't conferred on exactly that.
I could come down in the
alternate
morning, or
time.
I could be available in the evening as well. Or the day after, or the day before.
When you say the evening, what time?
Well, the last interview in Oxnard, it gets out at 6.
Oh,
So-
forget that.
However long it takes me to get down here.
Yeah, it's an hour and a half at least.
Obviously, you haven't driven through LA.
Not recently.
Yeah, then, yeah, okay.
It'd be 10 o'clock.
So 4:21 AM, or the day before or day after. Then my last question, and I'm the first one to lead off, so.
Sure.
What do you think your weaknesses are?
So I think my weakness specifically is I'm a relatively new recruiter. And so I don't have some of the experience. You might have someone come in here with 10, 15 years of experience. But I can tell you that, I have the energy and experience with people to get the job done.
Thank you very much, Gary, I appreciate your candor.
Hi, Gary.
Hi.
A couple of questions. Number one, looking at your placements, I see 4 that are relatively close, but none of them are in San Diego County. You don't have any placements in San Diego County Water Authority, from what I can tell.
Right.
You have a couple, Elsinore, Irvine Ranch, Rancho Marietta, and
Mhm.
Riverside, the closest ones, but you don't
Right.
have any in San Diego County Water Authority. To your knowledge, you probably never had any there, but
Yeah, I don't think we have.
okay. Another question I have for you, I'm gonna be asking everybody, this is integrity. The integrity of the process is very important. Very
Right.
important. The process being that you do your job, we do our job, and neither mix.
Right.
So my question is, this has probably happened to you in the past. In the past, have you been contacted, I think the only contact you've had with staff so far is with our attorney who sent out
Correct.
the information. If you were to have contact with our staff, or contact with any one of us individually, how quickly would you let us know that as an entire board, to know the integrity is still solid? In other words, someone calls you to ask the weather in Sacramento. Doesn't really matter what they call to ask you for. If they call and talk to you,
Right.
I think this full board wants to know.
The phone's
We
getting
wanna have
hung
the
up.
integrity knowing that.
I can
you're
answer that
being
question pretty
lobbied
easily.
by somebody.
So, I think the biggest thing that I bring to the process, aside from knowing people and getting people, is integrity. So, I was in law enforcement for nearly 27 years. So, as soon as I hang up the phone, I'd be emailing the entire board, the attorney, just to make sure that everyone is clued in and to ensure that everyone has the same information. It's like working with, when I was a chief of police, I didn't work for the city manager. I worked for the council, and you're much like a council.
Right.
Where I had to keep everyone informed. Because if somebody glad hands you, today, tomorrow they may be, something else may be going on. So you gotta be careful. And the integrity of the process only works if board and staff knows that the recruiter we'll not have any shenanigans, you know.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And you already mentioned the timeline is 90 days, so assuming we start right away, August 1st is when we'd be looking at completion of some type with the chosen candidate. And of course, then we'd have to deal with them on their availability and moving if they had to
Certainly.
move or whatever. Your guarantee, we get 9 months down the road, it's not working. We've chosen the wrong person. Whatever, it didn't work for us.
Right.
Do you have any type of a guarantee or a warranty saying, you know what, yeah, if we all didn't make it together, we'll help you find the next one at a reduced cost? I just asked that because I've been involved in a few where that's been the problem.
Sure.
The first choice wasn't always the best, the second choice is better. But is there any type of guarantee or work with you kind of status or?
We stand by, I mean, our guarantees in the proposal, we stand by our guarantee.
Is that the year guarantee?
It's a 1-year guarantee. If you terminate the person for cause, or they walk away within the first year, no professional services fees, 0. We do that piece for free.
Right.
And the $1,500 for me coming down here, you don't pay that either. Maybe hotel
Sure.
and meals. So basically expenses only. And the advertising, re-advertising. And that's it.
Thank you. And if you were to be chosen, and we had our first meeting on the 21st, we have a very large convention for Aqua coming up, which
Okay.
is one of our biggest, and where the opportunity would be for a lot of people to be, that may be looking for this position.
Right.
Would there be a chance we could have a brochure ready by then?
What's the date on the conference?
It's the first week of May.
First
I mean,
week in
it's
May.
not
3
much
through
time.
6.
Yeah, it's the first week.
It would only give you about 10 days.
We could do it. We could do it, for sure. We've done it in less time. And that is a conference we would want to be at.
Yeah.
You know, and if you guys are represented, we would actually have you guys with brochures in your hands as well.
Right.
You know, because you guys know folks as well, potential good candidates.
Great. Thank you very much, and thanks for coming down.
Certainly.
Dr. Altar, did you have anything?
A couple left. I think most of mine have been answered. I also had a question on what Heather's involvement would be. You don't list a recruitment here, but it was up in Temecula, in Southwest Riverside County, Assistant General Manager for
Okay,
Rancho California Water District. I was on the interview panel,
okay.
helping them out, and I got a lot of really good feedback about Heather, about their relationship with Heather. So
Right.
that was important to me, that somehow she's involved.
She is. She will be helping with candidate evaluation and identification. And Heather, like I said, she is the premier water or wastewater recruiter, I think probably in the nation. I mean, so she has 24 recruitments right now. I mean, not in water and wastewater, but in everything, from SF Airport to Mono County's CAO. So, I mean, she couldn't take this on, but I told her, I haven't done water and wastewater. She's like, well, I will help you and walk you through it. You know, and she really does make time to help us.
Kind of related to that, could you talk about the scope of the search, like, you know, regional versus, I mean, do you automatically, for water, wastewater recruitments, do you automatically go nationally? or-
Not automatically, and that really depends on the public entity. One of the determining factors is the board gonna be willing to assist the candidates to come out from New York or from Florida and pay their travel expenses? And that is one of the big factors. Because if you guys aren't willing to do that, people aren't gonna come, so there's no sense in advertising nationally.
Okay.
That's a consideration. That's something would be determined in that kickoff meeting.
I think that was about it. I think the others were answered from.
Yeah, I think Gary, and I've got a lot of my information already too, but I did have a couple of questions. You had alluded to the fact that you're relatively new at recruiting, although you have a very impressive resume, and appreciate your service in law enforcement.
Sure.
How long have you been recruiting, and have you been with any other firms other than Ralph Anderson?
I have not been with any other firm other than Ralph Anderson. I retired from law enforcement in June of 2014, and this is my first job since my retirement.
Okay.
And so I've done several searches on my own, from the chief of police for UCSF to the down here in San Diego at Southwestern Community College. They're vice president for business and financial affairs. I'm doing Oxnard, CFO, city manager in Los Banos. I mean, a full array of searches. I just haven't got to water and wastewater yet, and I'm trying to get you guys to sign me up, because I know I'll do a good job for you guys. I
Okay.
really will.
And so in that limited time, can you give us an example of a recruitment process where you feel you just hit a home run, you found the perfect person, it's turned out successful? And then on the opposite side, has there been any experiences where you just got it wrong and you learned some lessons, and, you know, and could you share some of those experiences?
Well, I think that both of those are the same recruitment for me.
Okay.
And it was at UCSF. When at the outset in our kickoff meeting, the vice chancellor for that division said, you know, UCSF is a $4 billion enterprise. In 10 years, we're going to be $8 billion. We need a progressive leader who can come in and help us grow for the next 10 years. And they had an interim in place, and very capable individual that I personally would not have selected to be the chief of police. We go through the interview process, or let me back up, through the recruiting process, and I find this individual, African-American assistant chief in a big city in Texas, and former Navy guy. I mean, he's like the first African-American captain, deputy chief, assistant chief. I mean, he's as articulate as the President of the United States. I mean, this guy is sharp as can be. And so I talked him into coming to UCSF, and recruited him to UCSF. And he came for the interviews. The 16-member committee that UCSF assembled narrowed the candidate field to 3 candidates, actually to 2 candidates. That individual and a deputy chief from San Jose PD that I recruited. And they said, well, let's bring the interim along for the experience, because he's going to be working for one of these 2 individuals. It'll be great. And my mistake was I let that go. I said, okay, let's bring him along. And brought him along. We went through the entire process. We did meet the candidates. And so we had an auditorium of 100 cops, community service officers, dispatchers. They met all the candidates, and they went in there. We went the interim, and when they left, we went the guy from Texas. That guy's the real deal. And then they interviewed with another vice chancellor, and they interviewed with the interim vice chancellor who actually made the decision. And she selected the interim. After the committee of 16 unanimously said, the guy from Texas. And so I felt like I didn't manage that well enough, because I really should have excluded that individual. And I probably was not experienced enough to figure that out. And so I learned that, and I knew he shouldn't be in the process, but, and I talked to the decision maker for 45 minutes on the day she made the decision, because the chair of the committee called me and said, you got to talk to the decision maker. So I called her and chatted with her for about 45 minutes, and she's like, no, the committee got it wrong. I'm not looking for into the future of UCSF 10 years out. I'm looking for right now. And I like what he's doing. That was it. Unbelievable. And so, had I not given her that option, I wonder what she would have done. You know, and I feel bad for the guy from Texas, because he could be the police chief of, you know, Oakland PD or San Francisco. This guy is, I mean, he's the real deal. So,
Well, thank you.
does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Have you had any candidates that were selected and since you've been on board and didn't work, like you lost them in a year within that
No.
warranty
No.
timeframe?
No. And I can tell you that Our firm has not had that occur in the past 4 years. And I know, that's not the case with all the firms out there.
Okay. I'm going to throw you a softball because of your background here. Obviously, I think backgrounding and screening is very important for, regardless if it's general manager or if it's a store clerk. Tell us a little bit more about what processes that you would go through, and obviously with your backgrounds in law enforcement, I think you'd understand and appreciate how important that is as well.
Okay. Well, first of all, my background, I have a law degree, and I'm currently a licensed private investigator in California. So, and with my law enforcement background, substantial amount of my experience was in investigations. So, my background reports, my background checks, it's just something that's in me. They're deeper than most. And I have uncovered things that have taken candidates out. And it's in our interest to get the candidate moving forward and get on to the next search. But if there's something there, we don't want to redo the search the next year. So that's why we definitely go deep on the searches. So we do the stand. It is really pretty standard. All the paper checks and computer checks is standard, and that's listed in the recruitment brochure. I'm sorry, in the proposal. But the real difference is when you interview the references. We do interview references, and everyone's going to give you 6 references who are going to say great things about them, right? And I had one candidate gave 6 references, not, all looked good, but I'm like, he had a full-time assistant. Why isn't his assistant down? Because we asked for, 2 supervisors, managers, 2 colleagues, and 2 subordinates. Didn't list his assistant. So, I could not get to her, but for going through someone else. So I found another person. I got her name, circled back to the assistant. Did not have nice things to say about the individual's demeanor and how he talked to women, and that was problematic for the employer, and that person wasn't selected.
Director Hernandez.
Follow-up question relative, just because I haven't done this in a long time.
Sure.
How, what's your general feeling as how long it takes from when we select the candidate to when he may be sitting in our seat?
Or she.
Or her?
Sure. Once the candidate's selected, depending on how you do compensation, if we help you with the negotiations, it's usually a week to get that taken care of. And during that same time period, we're doing the background. We're doing the background investigation, meaning the reference calls, and trying to get that squared away. Usually it's 7 to 10 days, and you should have a final report in front of you. So after your conditional, you want to do a conditional offer, of course, subject to the background investigation. We'll get the salary aligned, and then once we get everything squared away, you get the offer letter out, and the person's got to get notice. And it really, and that process takes about maybe 2 weeks. And then it's going to depend on the candidate. And candidates that are vested with an organization for 25 years, a lot of institutional knowledge, they're going to want more time before they can show up on your doorstep. They're going to need to have a transition where they're at to leave in good standing. And then other organizations are like, oh yeah, that's fine, good job, 2 weeks out. So 2 to 4 weeks is the short answer.
It's nice to meet you, Gary. One of the issues that I've seen occur before is the disconnect between what the salary range is of the board that you guys have got in mind and the salary expectations of the candidates. So I was wondering if you could share with the board the process that you see in setting the salary range, because it's really disappointing. I've seen where you can get to the point where you've picked out a candidate And then if you're really waiting to negotiate the salary, sometimes there's a breakdown, and you lose candidates that maybe
Right.
you wouldn't necessarily have considered if everybody understood what the expectations were. And then the second thing is do you see any advantage of doing the background searches when you get down to 2 or 3 candidates, or three or more candidates rather, because that way, that's sort of taken care of. I mean, I know you need
Right.
their permission, but I've also had a situation of where we had a very good candidate, and it turned out, we were gonna use him in the financial department, and he was a lawyer that had embezzled,
Right.
so it was, we had to get rid of him,
And-
after,
On those final 2 or 3 candidates, we do the backgrounds.
Okay.
We don't do the reference calls, only the reference calls get completed on the selection.
Yeah.
So just
But-
make sure that that's squared away.
But how, the salary issues really can
And the
be
salary
problematic.
issue, how we've been advising our clients on the salary issue, is really, you have to figure out what you guys are willing to pay. And that's gonna set the expectation of the candidates. So, for example, my Oxnard search that's coming down to the finals, I've got 3 great candidates. And when we were doing, started out in the search, the previous CFO made $181,000. And they were not happy with their candidate pool. They took a chance on that individual. He lasted 7 months, and that was with another firm, and then they had us do the search. And so they raised the salary to $198,000 as the top end salary. For CFO, Oxnard is a pretty big city. They have 1,200 employees. So they raised the salary to $198,000, and we advertised and recruited, and we had 17 candidates, and they were okay. There were a couple that were really good. And I conferred with my contact at Oxnard. I said, I mean, you're not getting CFOs from other cities, who are willing to come to Oxnard for that cost of living for $198,000. You gotta raise the salary. And so they raised the salary to $225,000 because they had money to do it. And after they raised that salary, we attracted another 21 candidates, 10 with CPAs. We had no CPAs in, now we have 10 CPAs. And so that really that's what's driving that search. And I got, 4 sitting directors of finance from big cities the size of Oxnard, who are willing to come to Oxnard, or around 210. And so that's what really drove the search. And so having an initial assessment of what the going rate is for general managers in the San Diego region is gonna be helpful. And, part of our services that we provide is compensation, on the compensation side of the building. They do salary studies and salary surveys, and they may have one for another organization down here that may be helpful. I'll have to check into that.
So in our first kind of project kickoff meeting, as you called it, would that discussion take place there where you would bring some benchmark data for us to kind of consider? We also just, going through our own GM evaluation process, we've benchmarked that fairly recently as well.
Right.
And then the second part of that question is, based off of your experience, would you suggest having like a range that you would advertise? Or I noticed on some of the brochures, as we got from the many proposals that we had requested, that there was just, a number that was on the proposal. Do you
Right.
advertise that and open it up, or do you keep it as a negotiation once you get into the process? What would you recommend?
So I would recommend up to X amount. And so you're putting a hard ceiling on that, so that if a candidate makes 230 and you're saying 210's it, that candidate's not gonna apply. Unless the recruiter tells them, I can get you 240, and, which is disingenuous. So, I think the board has to decide as a group where your cap is. I read the paper, I saw what your previous general manager was making, pretty substantial amount for the area. So I think that, and it depends on the quality of the people you want. So it's really gonna range. Because you may have a great person making $160,000 at another district, and he's willing to come out here for, you know, 200, you know?
So that conversation then that would be very early on in the process, that initial meeting, we'd have to have that, kind of hash that out. And
If we're gonna do 10 days and get a brochure out and be at the water conference, it's gonna happen, you know, it's gonna be number 2 or 3 on the list,
Okay.
to happen in that kickoff meeting.
Director Hernandez.
Just that kickoff meeting, how many hours do you think that's gonna take?
I don't think it's gonna take hours, I
Oh.
mean, maybe an hour and a half,
Really?
yeah.
And at the end of that time period, we'll all be comfortable that you'll have enough criteria to put together with a quick approval from us, the brochure and ready to go?
Yeah, I think so. I do wanna ask a question for, Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Board subject to the Brown Act, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't wanna have a serial meeting. So a lot of times what we do is have the initial kickoff meeting with the group, and then I'll meet with folks individually,
Mm-hmm.
so as to not violate the Brown Act, to get your individual perspectives. And then what I do is I synergize them, and then feed it back to you guys, and you guys say yes or no, change this, add this. I meant this instead of that. And so it's really a compilation of,
That by definition is a serial meeting.
Yeah, I think you'd have.
it's not a serial
Come to
meeting,
each one of us and ask us our perspective.
Right.
You're asking the same question, it's a serial meeting.
but it's not a serial meeting unless you guys discuss it.
Well, no, it's, you can meet with them, and you can get input, but then we've got to share that together in a meeting context, okay?
Right.
In open, we can't have you communicating back and forth with them individually and getting input from them. That really does set up a serial meeting, where you're basically kind of like the daisy in the middle, and you're building a consensus in between them. If I understand, that's what your approach is.
And that's the approach.
Okay.
That's the approach that at Los Banos, the attorney advised to do that approach.
Well, I'd have to know a little more specific, but I don't want, it's not a good idea for you to be, you can go ahead and meet with them and get their input.
Right.
But then when you start communicating that back out and then getting communications back from them on a final product, that's building a consensus.
Okay. So
Okay? And I
your
take a
district
conservative.
do that in public, right?
Yes, you can do that in public, but
Yeah.
I don't, I take a conservative approach on that because I don't want them to be embarrassed.
Of course.
Okay.
No, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. We have about 2 minutes left,
Okay.
and I want to respect everybody's time. Did you have any questions of us?
Yeah, I got it.
Well, I don't have any questions. I have a ton of questions for the kickoff meeting.
Yeah, but nothing at this point.
But nothing at this point. I just want to thank you for your time, for being here and giving me the opportunity to present to you.
And Director Martin does have a couple questions.
Kickoff meeting, got it. Candidate evaluation, number 4, that's your evaluation that you're doing, is that how I'm to assume that? Number 4 on your list?
Yes.
Then number 5 is review of candidates with us.
Correct.
That's a joint meeting
So that's
of all of us.
that'd be a closed session meeting where I would have candidate books for each one of you. You'd have all the candidates, and then with our evaluation of them, and in those 3 categories, the top tier meets minimum quals, lacks minimum quals.
And if we limit it to that one, if we limit it to 3 or 4, you then could do the investigations prior to a final selection of all the individuals, could you not?
The full investigation with reference checks and everything? Yeah. We could. Generally, we charge a little bit more money for that, though.
How much?
I'm not sure. So I could get you that information. I think we've done $1,000 a person, because it ends up taking, those do take a substantial amount of time.
Thank you very much.
Director Oliver.
Yeah, just real quick, when do you anticipate, if you were to be selected, when do you anticipate we would do board interviews of the finalists? About mid-July maybe, something like that?
Well, let me, look at my, I should say. Mid-July. Usually going to advertise for about 4 or 5 weeks, so 6 weeks. probably 6 weeks from now, that is like late June, early July.
Okay, late June, early June.
Okay, well, thank you.
Did you mention to him, we're gonna make this decision?
Yeah, so we have you're the first of a few different
Okay.
interviews that we have. We will discuss things at the end of all of this, but we're not gonna be announcing any decisions, so you can save yourself a few hours if you'd like and just head home, not worry about it.
Oh, certainly.
Okay, then that's it. Thank you for your presentation and.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Really appreciate it.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Gary.
Thank you. Check this guy.
No. What do I do?
You gotta have a first with that, just good luck.
Oh, no, it might be.
But you do it all the time, and you just did that. You do.
Really?
Yeah. I've seen you do it when we're having lunch.
Yeah?
You know,
Well, yeah, maybe it's an affirmative,
Yeah.
something. Have another tick.
We all have them, I just noticed it. So now you remember when you start doing it, right?
Well, and that's the way, I check that way too.
Yeah. No, so do I, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Gary,
Nice
thank
meeting
you very
Gary.
much, thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Did you drive down, or you fly?
I flew.
You fly right back up?
Yep. Fly right back down.
Get the Southwest points, right?
Exactly.
You're flying to Palomar just for future reference, a lot closer.
I don't think you can anymore. There's no more
Huh?
flights.
That's what I used to.
Yeah, I don't think
Southwest is
Southwest
doing-
does.
United used to go to LA, but not anymore.
Yeah, they're
Just
working
check
on it.
Palomar, it's only 5 miles away.
They're working on it.
So, thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Only a couple of minutes to discuss, we'll bring this guy right in.
I think she's getting him now, assuming he's here.
Well, what time were they due?
There was a guy here.
The
2 o'clock?
2 o'clock.
On the hour,
Yeah.
too.
Did you guys want a couple minutes, or are you okay to?
Doesn't matter to me.
Can you give us 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Just while he's fresh on our mind, I'm
Yep.
thinking,
Mhm.
we're gonna start getting together.
Sure. Did you have something to say?
I just wanted to know what everybody thought, I don't really know, I like some of his answers.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I had good reports about the firm on my research, and primarily from the Rancho California event. He answered, the question relative to the other meetings, that like that. New recruiter, that was,
Yeah, that.
Caught my eye.
That was one of the things that caught mine too, and there's a lot of reference to, was it Kimberly or Kathy or
Heather,
Heather?
Heather Wrench.
yeah,
And, she's, I think at one point he even said that she was the best there is. Well, I kind of want the best, so.
Yeah.
And, I was a little disappointed she's not gonna be the representative, but other than that, I mean, he seemed,
yeah.
but there again, she's working on 21 or 22.
No, I know.
I mean, we're just one. I liked his honesty and sincerity with the question he answered to you
Mhm.
about what was the good thing and the bad things, and they
Yeah.
both, he was very honest. I mean, you tell the story, it was a true story, it wasn't a,
yeah,
let's make one up.
absolutely.
So, overall, I thought it was a good guy.
Yeah, I sensed a lot of integrity from,
Yeah, I did too, I jumped all over that.
yeah, I got a lot of really good feedback about Ralph Anderson and Associates from Rancho, so I've had some bad experiences with some recruiters and some that proposed, but I got some really good feedback on them, so they were my top choice looking at the proposals
Oh,
so
okay.
far, so.
Anything else? Okay, and we're ready anytime you are. And you're bringing in Frank Rojas, is that who it is? Okay. So Frank, this is gonna be, not the most formal process, but we would like you to maybe kick off with, 20 to 30 minutes to introduce yourself and your firm and tell us a little bit about, what you do and the process, and then we'll leave maybe 30 minutes at the end for some Q&A and just open discussion back and forth.
Absolutely, thank you. And again, thanks for allowing CPS to present here. We're excited to be working with you. I've been working with, I think over the last couple of years, about 5 other water districts. So very familiar with the operation. So I know that when Mr. Rucker left the last time, your new GM wasn't in a promotional opportunity. I know that you may not be familiar with CPS. So a little bit of background on CPS. We are a joint powers authority, meaning we're mandated to only work with other public sector organizations, city, county, state, special districts, and some federal government work as well. So everything we do is related to the public sector. What that means to you, I hope, is that there's some special nuances within the public sector, beyond just the Brown Act and Bagley Team, that type of thing, but there's just an integrity in the process, an improvement process, and a trust that our communities expect from us. And that's what the CPS, I feel, brings to the table. We're also basically an organization that's self-supporting, so we understand that cost is a factor. And so I'm not trying to go out and spend your money needlessly. We do try to keep the fee's the fee, but as far as additional costs, I work closely with you when we do the recruitment brochure. I think in the proposal we've mentioned there's, it could go as high as $1,100. The last one I did was about $750. So as far as travel goes, I'm actually moving to Riverside next month. So much of my work has been down here, so no more plane trips as far as that goes. So do everything I can to keep the costs down. And I'll talk about advertising a little bit, but as far as our reputation, there's plenty of references there. And again, you can go to Tuolumne Utilities, Hidden Valley, Imperial Irrigation, a number of organizations I've worked with, Kings River, that I've done GM recruitments for, and they can basically vouch for myself. And then there are others that you can go to just check out CPS in general. But I think that gives you a better comfort level. I would encourage that. One of part of the process and part of the integrity, I think, is who we recruit, and there's a fairness to the process. And it bodes well to try to bring as many female applicants, minority applicants to the table, just to give options out there. Again, the public's looking at this, your communities are looking at this, and they just want to know, is there a full representation? So we look at that as well. Again, just being in the public sector, just keeping in mind on the integrity aspects of the recruitment process. We meet timelines and conduct the recruitment at the cost proposed, so I won't come back to you and say, well, we need more money. If anything else, we'll be paying less than what we originally proposed. Personal background, when I graduated from Berkeley in 1981, my first job was as a recruiter, and I never looked back. I do this work because I love it. I have a passion for it. I wasn't in another industry and thought, well, I can make more money in recruiting. I came into recruiting as a first job, and I love what I do. If I do my job right and I do it well, I can have a huge impact on the organizations of the communities that I support, and this is why I'm here. I'm a traditionalist. I started recruiting before there was an internet. So I pick up the phone and I call people. I like to make personal contact, get referral sources. One of the things that I learned early on is the relationship building. If I call someone and I say, hey, I'm doing this recruitment for this organization, they'll know who I am. And they'll know that we've worked together in the past. Again, we've built a level of trust. They know how I conduct myself professionally, and I do get referrals. People trust that if they refer someone, I'll follow up with the call. Whether they move forward or not, that's going to depend on your needs and what their background, their experiences in relation to what you're looking for. But I do like to pick up the phone, a lot of piggybacking, basically generating referrals. That said, I don't ignore the fact that we're in a technology age today. I've been named top 1% viewed profiles on LinkedIn. I don't say that for bragging rights, but what that means to you is that if I go on LinkedIn and I start saying there's this incredible opportunity for your chance to make a huge difference in the community that's well-deserving, people look at it, they see it. People I'm connected with, they actually tab it, that they like it, and it goes on to all their connections as well. So we start a buzz going through that, and that's the kind of campaign that we can do through the media as as far as online media, but I also, CPS has this large marketing team. So one of the things that our marketing group will do, I'll give them the specs of the position, and they'll actually go out and start with public sector, everything's in public domain, but they'll actually start finding all the names of all the GMs, assistant GMs from all the other water districts, conservation districts. If we're doing a regional search, they'll do it regionally. If we're doing a state search, they'll go across the state. If they're doing nationally, we'll do a national search, but we'll start sending out a mail merge or an email blast, if you will. So people are now learning about the job. If they didn't hear it from me personally, they're hearing about it through a direct email. The other thing we do is advertising. Quite frankly, it's not my favorite way to get the word out, quite frankly, but I don't know everyone. But it's a way of blanketing a region or an area. Not only that, but the public wants to know that your district is doing all they can to find the right person. They may not be in the industry, so they may not necessarily get a phone call from me or see the email, but they can see the ad. And if they see that, they'll say, okay, Vallecitos is doing all they can to find the right person. And so that is basically the coverage that we can offer as far as making sure that there isn't anybody out there that either is or is not in the job market. Many times I look at advertising as basically a way of getting the word out, but we're not looking for the best person that applies. We're looking for the best person that's available for the job. And that's where I think the traditional methodology really comes in. I've worked in recruiting again for over 35 years. And I've noticed that, but I think what separates people who really love the job and people that are successful are the people who just like to enjoy talking to people, like to ask the questions, picking up the phone and talking to people, making those connections, developing those relationships. Because that's who, there may be people out there that aren't even looking for work right now, but when they hear the opportunity to live in San Marcos or one of the neighboring communities, I'd love to. And I think a lot of people out there would see it the same way. So again, not only working for not only the opportunity, but the location I think is ideal as well. So that essentially though, one of the things I want to talk about CPS, because I'm really proud of the organization that I work for. Is there's a guiding value statement that reads, care about the customer, care about each other, and care about the organization. And that caring, again, goes along with just my own passion for what I do. And that's one of the things you're going to get from me. In the materials that I handed out to you, a lot of it's paperwork as far as if I talk about the processes, you can look and say, okay, this is what it looks like. I put a proposed schedule in there so you can see the timelines and who we'll be working with. But I also put my business card in there. That business card has my personal cell phone, the same number that my kids call me on. What that means is I'm available to you 24/7. If an idea pops into your head on a Sunday evening, you can pick up the phone and call me. I love some of the best recruitments I've had are clients just like that. An unexpected phone call comes through, and he said, Frank, I just was thinking about something. Have you talked to these people? Have you referred to, where are we in the process? One of the things that I do, though, just as far as keeping you comfortable about the process, is not everyone is available to pick up the phone and talk. Not everyone likes to get emails all the time, depending on how many you get. What I do is I put a spreadsheet together, and that spreadsheet has the name of the candidates that have applied, their current position, the current title, all the organizations they work with, their education, and I put that spreadsheet and I email that to you at the end of each week or on Friday or Monday. Usually I give it a couple weeks just to allow people to start applying right away. But that keeps you informed of the process. So you're not wondering, well, I wonder what Frank's doing, I wonder how the recruitment's going. You don't have to pick up the phone and call me unless you'd like to, but you get an update every week as far as how far we are along in the process, your comfort level. Maybe you don't see enough candidates and they say, Frank, there's only 18 people that have applied. Where's everybody else? Or you may, and I've had clients do this before, I'll put the people that I'm interviewing, and below that, people that I'm still reviewing, and below that, people that I'm not moving forward. And I've had a client actually say, Frank, I actually know this person, and you're not moving them forward. Why is that? And the answer will typically be there, but to say, well, this is our salary range, this is what he's looking for. Unless we're going to change the salary range, he's overpriced. So, well, I didn't realize he was making that much. So, and not pretty much, but at least it gives you a comfort level of who's applied, who's in the process. This is the public sector, and unfortunately, I just closed a position on Monday, city manager at the City of Avalon, and we had 13 people apply at 5 o'clock, I think, and so there is that, the last minute, it kind of, so throughout the process, I'm doing interviews because I do know that that happens. Typically, the first few people I interview, they set the bar. It's like the downhill skiing in the Olympics. Whoever comes in first, now everybody has to beat that time. Whoever I interview, after that, the quality of people who come in, they have to beat the quality of the person that I've just talked to. So I'm elevating the process. I'm not just looking at people at the very end and trying to pick. Not only that, if people do come in at the very end, I'm not gonna have to take a week or so to interview people at the last minute. I'll have had all the interviews taken care of. Now it's just a few who come in at the end that we'll choose to interview. So it keeps us on a timeline, and I know that's important to you. As far as the organization, one of the things I wanted to add, though, is because the nature of our business, we're not commission-based recruiters. What that means to you is we're not competing with one another. I can go to Stuart or Pam, I can go to my colleagues and say, so I'm working on this GM position, I know you just worked with this position over there, who do you know? And they're glad to share information as opposed to trying to hold on to it for the next recruitment that may come up. We actually do share information. We share any knowledge that we may have gained. There's 80 people in our office. We don't just do executive search. We do testing, we do training, we do compensation and classification studies. We're a full human resource organization. And so if there's other information that I can glean from another department, I can go there and do that. And again, that's part of the caring for our customer base. We are very customer focused. Don't want to say that as a sales tool, but it's really true. I mean, I've worked with a couple of other organizations, and I think there is a sense that we want to be successful as an organization, not just to fill this position, not just to get this job done, but hopefully to build a long-term relationship. You may not do a lot of executive search down the road, but perhaps you do want to do a classic comp study and think of CPS. That's the recruitment, that's the background and history. As far as the process goes, if you were to select CPS, and I'm trying to talk slow, so feel free to interrupt me at any time. I interview people and talk so fast I can't ask the next question. So if you do want to jump in, please just don't hesitate. You're not interrupting me. The recruitment process, the first part of it is we get together, we do a kickoff meeting. I try to learn what your vision is, understand not just the words on a page, the job description, certifications, degrees, that type of thing, but what are some of the attributes and key competencies you're looking for? What's the culture of the organization? Trying to get that ideal candidate profile. And we're building a recruitment outreach brochure. With those emails, if anybody I talk to, this is what they're going to see. In those ads, this is what they're going to see. And we want to put the district in the best light. There's going to be photographs of the region, of the job, of the people. And it's going to basically highlight the best that we can offer, which is going to be, again, we want to make it exciting for the people that would look at this position as one they'd be interested in. During that kickoff meeting, we're going to set basically the template. We're going to look at that schedule, and if there's any changes we need to make, I always ask people, look at the interview week. I recently worked with an organization up in Victorville, and even though we had this proposal, when it came time to send the interviews, no one was available. So I do try to say, so is this going to work within your calendars? I know things can change, and if that happens, it's my job to basically get back together and say, okay, so let's expedite this, let's do it the best way possible. We want to set the process up early, and we want to do it right. Again, what are the main issues with the organization? When I pick up the phone and talk to people, one of the first questions is, okay, Frank, when I step in there, what's the first thing that they're going to expect from me? And what are they going to want? What are the issues? What are the challenges that they're going to want me to address immediately? And those are the things that we can learn during this kickoff meeting. And also, what are the opportunities to address? I know that your meeting, your water goals, your community has been great. Desalination plant out in Carlsbad is being really helpful. Do we want people that just have water and wastewater, or is it important to have people with desalination experience? Or maybe you're thinking about infrastructure and engineering. Is that important? Or is the finance background more important? I mean, we'll put all these things together. And those are the things that I'm going to be targeting as I'm out recruiting. Is this going to be a regional search, a state search, a national search? What are your goals behind this? What are you thinking about doing? Quite frankly, I'd like to blanket the earth and try to find you the best, absolute best people that you can find, and let you decide during that stage of selecting candidates. Well, this is what we're looking for. Actually, we thought we were looking for this person, but this guy looks interesting. Let's put him in the interview pool. So it just kind of opens it up a little bit. things that I might see that you may not be able to, just because you're not on this side of the phone, but it may give you some options that you hadn't really considered before. What type of background do they come from? Is this somebody that you want from a similar sized district, or is this a step-up position? Do you want somebody who's been there, done that, and has the GM title in front of their name already, or is this something that somebody is an assistant GM might be ready to step up into, more operationally might be ready to step up, or finance director, again, depending on your goal. So those are the specs. Once that's done, the fun part starts. And that's now when I'm actually getting on the phone and I'm talking to people, we're creating a buzz through business, through social media, we're getting the advertising going, and then we're really starting to bring in the candidates, and I can really assess that. Because I've worked on so many of these in the past, there are going to be a whole number of people that I would probably call directly to. Maybe, for whatever reason, Hidden Valley's a much smaller organization. We're doing the final interviews for this coming week. Small organization, people who maybe were looking for a larger breadth of opportunity, they didn't apply there, but they said, get me on the next one, this may be the next one, so I can target people right away too. So that, for me, that's the fun part of the job, actually talking to people and find out who's out there. If they're not available anymore, well, who do you know? Who can you refer? And again, starting to get that referral generation going. I think in terms of timelines, I don't see any issues with, I know that we put 14 to 6 weeks in the scope. I think the proposal, the proposed schedule I gave you is probably close to 12 to 14 weeks. If that works for you, great. If not, we can stretch it out a little bit. Mostly what I'm trying to do is meet your needs. Tell me when you're looking for it. When is your GM? How much overlap do you want? Those types of questions. As far as the recruitment process, I think the Q&A that I do, the reason that I'm doing interviews, and the reason that's important to you is you want to know, well, what's the flavor of this person beyond the words on the resume? What does this person feel like? How do they answer questions? What's their perspective? And you'll see that. I don't come here and just say, okay, so let me tell you about the candidates. You're actually going to see my interview questions and my interview notes. I've done that throughout my career, and I've checked in with my clients and said, so what did you think of that? He said, this was excellent. It gave us a different perspective that we wouldn't have normally gotten if he hadn't done this. So every question I ask is there. Their answers are color-coded, so it's easy to read. But again, what that does, and I don't say I make it concise, so it's readable. And for any reason, I feel during the conversations, I've lost the perspective of what a person has said because they've said a lot of words. I'll bring it back together and I'll say, okay, let me read this back to you. And typically people said, yeah, you said a lot fewer words than I did, but that's exactly what I meant. And so that's what you get a chance to see. So not only the documents they send in, but the actual interview that I conducted. So you're going to get a really good perspective. And during that client report, when we get back after the recruitment process, when we get back together and decide who we're going to interview, you're going to have a lot of information there. You may ask other questions that maybe didn't arise or weren't printed out. I'll come prepared to answer those. We'll decide at that point what the panel is going to look like. Are we going to do a one interview or a two interview process? If we think it's going to be a two interview process and one person shows up and just blows everybody's socks off, then maybe it ends sooner than we thought. At that point, though, we can determine that. On the day of the interview, if you bring other people in for the interview, maybe just do an early process, first screening, and then you'll come back and do the final interview. We can also do that as well. We can set that process up during the kickoff as far as how we're going to decide. And then if there's been any adjustments, we'll decide that for sure during the client report. But again, that's an opportunity to get back together again and review where we're at and the candidates, and then kind of give you basically the decision on who you'd like to move forward with the interview process. So we're going to discuss the applicant pool. We're going to discuss the next steps. And then on the day of the evaluation, I'll have scheduled all the interviews. I'll have sent you or your panel a new binder, which basically has the resumes, all the interview questions. I will have sent you a menu of interview questions. It's a longer menu, maybe 34 questions. You narrow it down to 12 or 13 questions. You give the candidate 3 to 5 minutes to introduce themselves, and then you ask yourself. The panel will ask their structured questions. Throughout the process, throughout the day, I'll be there. I'll be facilitating the interview. I'll be introducing the candidates, giving them a real quick view of what to expect. I'll be bringing them into the room, escorting them out, giving you time for the panel time to, take their notes. And at the end, we'll have an organized discussion, debrief, if you will. We'll talk about, we'll do a ranking, we'll do a rating of each candidate.
Can I just stop real quick with a question on the question development? Are you gonna develop these questions based off of all the conversations that we're having in the candidate profile, or is this just a kind of a boilerplate questionnaire that you ask all of the candidates?
Well, both. My questions will kind of give you an idea of what have you already learned that you don't need to learn a second time. We'll ask you the questions. So yeah, it's going to be more directed towards what your needs are. I do have boilerplate questions. There's probably 20, 25 of those, but I kind of ramp it up to actually look at some of the key points we brought up, things that are on the brochure that they would respond to, and we'll ask questions about that. You may want to bring up more technical questions. You have a technical background, so you may want to direct more questions directly to the candidate about their experience, something that you would know about. But again, that's something that we would decide. I would give you those questions well in advance of the interviews, and then I'll format them so on the day of the interviews, you'll actually have plenty of room to write your notes. And there's always follow-up questions. I do bring a sheet of paper with me. It's just kind of puts people at ease, but it's questions we do not ask. And the reason I put on a piece of paper, I don't want to sound condescending when I tell somebody, don't ask about a person's marital status or kids and things like that. But I just want to make sure that, again, that the process has integrity, that no mistakes are made throughout the interview. And those and again, but we do have follow-up questions, and that's why I try to limit questions to maybe 12, 13, 14 questions on the day of the interview, because that gives you plenty of time to ask follow-up questions. So, yeah.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, thank you. At that point, again, the process is, if we narrow the candidate pool down, like couldn't decide between maybe 2 or 3 people, we'll bring those people back again. I'll schedule those interviews. At that point, I'll start the reference process, and we'll give you a little bit more information to glean candidates from. And once the final candidate, we'll do the background check, and we'll basically that felony, misdemeanor, education, financial background. We'll do newspaper checks, DMV. Newspaper checks basically, typically when I'm talking to a candidate during an interview, I usually just Google them. I've got a couple of screens there. I'm asking questions on one page, and I'm reading about them on another page. And so if I see something that's kind of highlighted, I might just say, out of curiosity, tell me about this. And I typically will just be real direct and say, there's some information on the internet. A couple of times I've said, so if I do an internet search, what will I find? And I've had people say, well, nothing. And I'm just like, gosh, I should.
Good luck with that.
rather than put them on the spot where they have to, hope that something's on there, they haven't Googled the name before, I'll actually just tell them, look, it's public. Everything's public domain now. I just did this search. Tell me what happened. And it's not going to mean that the person doesn't move forward. But at the end of the comments, I'll say, this guy's an excellent candidate. They're professional, they're articulate, they have a background, they've been a strong leader, but they had a DUI offense back in 2013. This is how they explained it. I was doing a recent recruitment in the area here, actually, and there was one gentleman who had been at the top of the food chain, and his life crashed and burned a couple of years back. And I moved him forward in the process, but even in the interview, he was a beaten man. You could tell that he hadn't worked in a couple of years. He was having a hard time turning his life around, but he belonged in the process. He had the skill set. The team knew exactly what his background was. And when the top candidate actually turned the job down, they actually brought this gentleman back. They put him before the entire city council. They talked to him. They said, that's been a couple of years. Let's give this guy a chance. I understand he's doing a beautiful job being selected. So they were very happy with a number of clients, but again, there was something about this guy that you just thought, okay, we know what's happened. He's fessed up to it. He's not denying anything that's happened. There's going to be, the media's going to get a hold of it. We're going to have to deal with that. But they weighed the pros and the cons and decided to move forward. So I leave that choice up to the team that I'm working for. People are asking, so what are the potential pitfalls? What are some challenges that we're going to have? Quite frankly, I've been recruiting for a long time. Every recruitment, every job has pitfalls. Some companies hire, some organizations pay more than others. We're not looking for the highest, or the lowest price guy out there. What we're looking for is somebody who's excited to come in here to work for Vallecitos and really wants to be a part of this community, wants to make a difference, wants to hopefully create a legacy in life. And that's the sort of person I'm looking for. So I don't see the only pitfalls I really run into is calendar. It's hard to get a bunch of people together in the same room at the same time. But that's my job to negotiate, and I'll quickly figure that one out. So I don't see any real challenges for this position. I think things have gone really well here. You know the fees already. If you have any questions about that, again, I will tell you that the CPS fee is set. But as far as the cost, the overhead costs, those are only what I spend are we going to bill. Because I'm moving to the area, you're going to save on airfare and things like that. So we actually got a better deal there. I do give you a list, and it's probably in the scope. But as far as advertising sources, again, I just try to broaden the blanket so that as many people can see it. People in the community, people in the industry will see it. So we do have public sector sites like California Special Districts, Jobs Available. LinkedIn's one that's become very popular, but also American Water Works run called the Water Jobs Association of California, Water Agencies among American Public Works Association. So we're targeting the relative. We're not going to the Engage or the Career Builders or the general sites. We're actually targeting sites, again, that we feel are going to be effective here. That's what I have. I hope that, I have a whole other page. Actually, 2 pages. I didn't want to make a speech, and I feel like I did that. So.
Well, thanks, Frank, it was good. We'll go ahead and start off with some questions, and I'll start at this end if you don't mind, Director
Okay,
Albert.
sure, yeah. Frank, I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little more about the scope of the search as far as do you start out regionally, or do you automatically go as wide as possible?
Well, again, during the kickoff, I would want to hear from you. Are you interested in somebody that knows California water rights, that knows the regulations, things that would really affect us or impact the state? Or are those things that are learned skills, and really what you're looking for is a leader, somebody who's done a great job somewhere within the United States? From that, so I would, if you say, well, actually, there's plenty of people in Southern California, let's just keep it regional, we can do that.
So you're looking for input from us on that?
Well, quite frankly, I am, but there's a part of me that I may talk to someone, and this isn't ignoring what you're going with your direction at all. What it's saying is, so I interviewed this person because I'm looking at the skill set, or I knew this person. They worked in California, back in the early 2000s. They did a great job, but they moved to another state basically to get that executive level position. Now they're interested in moving back to the state. It's been a few years, but I like this person. The leadership quality's there, financial acumen's there, the engineering background's there. I mean, what we're looking for. So all I want to do, you'll make the final decision as far as, yeah, we actually do want to talk to this person, or that's great. We appreciate the information, but we're going to stick to our regional search. But I don't want to take the opportunity for you to see really strong candidates out of your hands. And again, I'm not ignoring the direction that you might give, and I'm not going to bombard you with, if you say let's keep it regional, you're not going to see 5 people. You may only see 1 in the group there that's outside of the regional area. But again, it's just giving you a different perspective. You can see that, and you might decide, thanks but no thanks, or you might say, yeah, actually we agree. Let's move forward.
The Aqua Spring Conference is coming up the first week of May, and I was wondering, would it be possible to get something together that soon to be available at that conference? I know your schedule, shows something a little bit later as far as developing the brochure. But.
Yeah, I could probably put something together. It would be tough to put 2 things that we're playing here. I've got an organization that says we need a contract in place. I'm old school. I come from you shake hands on it. I'm going to trust you at your word. You're going to trust me at my word. So I'm actually selling a house right now, and we're doing the same thing. Realtor just called me just before I walked in, and and said, we just got an offer for an extra $8,000, what do you want to do? I said, well, we already told these people that we taken, I mean, I don't want to go back on my word, I mean, let's just stick with it. So it's business, so, you know, I'll hear from somebody else, when you're out of your mind, but I think there's a part of me that if you say, look, we would like to make a presentation, put something together for it. It may not be the entire pretty brochure, but it might be. If I get some information, we can get as much information from you as possible, we might be able to put something pretty good together. But again, I don't think it'll be the full scope of what we're looking for, certainly not, but it might at least be an announcement, hey, keep in mind, the sort of thing I do on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You know, this is good, you guys wanna keep looking at, looking for my, conversation here, because there's an exciting opportunity coming to go with you with the information.
Thanks.
I want my colleagues to ask some questions before it comes back to me, but I did have one based off of kind of a follow-up to Director Lothar. I see in your timeline here, you have anticipated dates, and I know that you're trying to kind of guesstimate on those.
Yeah.
One of the dates that we were discussing earlier about possibly having as that initial meeting would be April 21st. Was there a reason why you waited till May 6th from, you had other commitments, or I'm sorry, May 2nd? Did you have other commitments, or do we just kind of timing, like, okay, well, if they get back to me by this date, long story short, are you available on 21st? If that, is there any reason why you wouldn't be able to make a meeting?
So, April 21st?
Yes.
The
Thursday.
Are you asking me directly, because I'll
Yeah.
look on my.
Yeah, sure, please.
Absolutely. Truthfully, why did I pick that date? Next Monday and Tuesday, I'm gonna be at Hidden Valley doing interviews. On the 25th, so I know that's the 18th and the 19th. On the 25th, I'm gonna be in Victorville at AQ&E there at Mojave Desert. On the 26th, I'm gonna be at Casumas, and then I think I'm gonna be the following Friday at the City of Avalon. The 21st is open though. And so quite frankly, if you said to me, Frank, we like it, let's move forward, I'll be here.
Okay.
Let me just,
That's good.
not lie,
Good to know.
let me let you know that the 21st is open. Yeah, I was just trying to take a day off. So I don't need it. Well, why change now?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll have some other questions, but I'd like to let my colleagues ask first. So Director Martin, if you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Frank, thanks. By the way, your accent sounds like it's East Coast. Did you grow up on the East Coast?
I grew up in Tulare, California.
California. I know you say that.
Almost sounds New York. doesn't it?
So,
It does, sounds like New Yorker.
I think it's just bad English.
That's what they blame it on.
Public schools in the 50s and 60s.
During your opening statement, I think that you said your company, is it JPA?
Joint Powers Authority.
I know what that is, I'm questioning
So,
what.
Government Code 6500
Yeah,
just mandates that all we can do is work with other public sector organizations. So if I get a call from Boeing, and they say, Frank, hear good things about you, or I came out of the private sector. Hey, Frank, remember me, we're looking for this, pay you $28,000 if you do it.
Okay.
As long as I'm working for CPS. I can.
That was a head scratcher to me when I realized
Frank,
that too.
just,
I
when
thought-
I ask a
trying to
question,
figure that
I
out.
like short answers, I don't like long answers. But that's, I know you give
Very
long answers, that's good. So your JPA, who's your board of the JPA?
There is 7 board members, all public sector people, city, county, we have a school district rep, and I think there's somebody from the state. But it's all public sector members, and it's a 7-member board.
Thank you. Your timeline looked good, but as I said, as President just said, the timeline, we were looking at the 21st, we'd move it all up a week, so then it'd be done about August 1st.
If
3
you,
months is still the same.
I said yes.
Your background checks, again, I notice your background checks are expensive, but if we get down to the last 3 or 4, would it not behoove us to have background checks on all 3 or 4 before we decide on one and find out that he's a felon in Wisconsin?
I think through the references and just doing online searches, we would be able to see if there was anything in their history. We may not see an actual, but there's enough newspaper stories, there's no privacy out there anymore. You can pretty, you may find out, we may not know if somebody's, been in prison, but we'll know if they got arrested.
But if we asked you to do the background check
We
on the last
could.
3 or 4, there'd be an additional cost to you, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
in our proposal, we said for the finalists. And so
Right,
that
so if
would
there
be-
were 2 or 3, give me an idea of how much it would cost us to have
They're
backgrounds on all.
typically, if we do newspaper checks, it's $450. If we don't do newspaper checks, it's $400.
And then every once in a once, by and by, between you and the board, we do all our interviews, we do everything just the way we're supposed to, we pick the wrong person. And 6 months, 8 months, a year into it, we go, wrong guy, and he either quits or we let him go.
You have a 2-year
We'd come to you
guarantee.
and say, hey,
Yeah, you have a 2-year guarantee.
2 year,
Yes.
and what's the guarantee cover?
Yeah, I won't charge you the $17,000 professional fee. We'll have to do more advertising. We'll have to, the brochure won't cost anything because it's a matter of changing the date. The brochure will be the same unless there's some minor changes that we do. That will be minor. It's just, we'll do additional advertising costs because we want to get the word back out. But all the other, the phone calls, the media, the email, the outreach, that's just part of doing business.
Also, during your opening comments, you stated that there was a client that called you and asked you about a particular person and that they had recommended them, and you handled that somehow differently? And was that like one of the council members, or one of the board members?
It was actually the interim, the retired, my point of contact had been retired, and he was the fire chief. And he came back to be an interim fire chief, and he said, Frank, I know this guy, why would you not move him forward? And it actually said, I put dollar signs there, and he just didn't read it as an issue.
Okay, now my question, and specifically on that, is integrity and corporate integrity, not your
Yes.
personal integrity, corporate integrity. This body acts as a single being. There's 5 of us, but we act as a single being, and staff, but it's a single being. And my question is, if you were to be called by someone and asked how the weather is in Riverside, or what kind of flowers you have in your front lawn, or what about this candidate, and you had a talk with them, how soon would it be before the rest of the entity knew that this had occurred?
Okay, and I just need a little bit of clarity. First of all, on those lists, I do want to let you know, those lists I sent out, people that apply for jobs are doing it in private, so that would be information between us. And I would really, obviously, we would ask that you not call anybody that may know this person, because they're applying for these positions with all discretion. I give you the list because we're working together, and you'll see the names at some point anyway, because that's what we do. But I don't think that answers your question. I wasn't following your question. I apologize.
My question is, if this body of 5 people, if one person asks a question of you and you answer it, we all need to know that answer.
Gotcha.
It's not a one-on-one. We don't call you for, well, have you got anybody yet, because you brought that up. You call me and tell me, what have I been doing lately?
I see.
That's not for any single person on this body and/or staff to do.
Right.
It's up to us to do it jointly. We
Right.
all get the same answers, we all answer the same question.
I see.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does, and I don't work for only one board member.
Right. Have you had this happen where a staff member or a board member has called you
No,
to ask you a specific question or to
No, and
push somebody?
I see. So what I typically do is I ask for a point of contact. Who is my point of contact? That's usually the person I'm interfacing with. And if I say something to that person is sharing the information. That's the expectation. That's what we agree on during that April 21st meeting. Who's my point of contact? If I
So
say.
have you ever had that point of contact be the entire board as the point of contact?
Well, with Hidden Valley, I'm currently working with only 2 board members, and they've been very clear, we're the 2 people you talk to. With the information we get, we'll share with the other board members, but, they've asked us to work with you, you work with us.
They formed a committee.
Yes.
In this case, we're not forming a committee.
Okay. If you call me and say, hey, Frank, I need you to call Bob, he's a good friend of mine. If you're asking, will I send an email out to the board and just say, hey, just want to follow up on the request to call Bob, I did talk to him, he did not express an interest, just want to let you know.
Mhm.
Is that how you would like it handled?
That's my question, is do you handle that now that way? Or does it ever come up?
It hasn't, quite frankly, because I usually deal with one point of contact, the point of contact I'm working with is the person who would relay the information. Do I trust that they do that? Absolutely. I think they select the point of contact because they trust that person. I have no reason not to. However, if you want me to, again, that's a discussion we'll have. How do you want me to handle that? And that's how we'll do it.
And I didn't look at your complete list. I don't think you sent us the list of people you put in positions. Have you done anything in San Diego County?
Now, Imperial Irrigation District's the closest.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Me personally. CPS has worked with San Diego County, and
Okay.
what that means is, again, I'm not working in a silo here. I'm working with a group of people, and I'm going to be tasking them to help me out with any information they want.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Frank. Appreciate it.
Director Hernandez? Question?
Frank, how many other recruiting opportunities are you working on personally right now?
Good question. About 8 that are in the process of closing right now. And, you know, it's an interesting question. I think you were saying, are you too busy to do this? And so I'm going to be really direct with you, if you don't mind a longer answer. So
Oh, no, you can keep me.
He likes long answers.
He's the only short guy.
Okay. Well, to all of you utilities district, I actually didn't get a chance to do the presentation, but I did see it on camera. And they asked my coworker, you know, they said, we're not comfortable if you're working on more than 3 recruitments. So they they chose another recruiting firm. It didn't work out. They called back, and this time I had a chance to talk to them. And I was saying, look, I heard this question on camera. I'm just going to be real straight with you. I've been recruiting my whole life. I feel it's best to do a really honest approach. I'm not going to come and tell you I'm not making money. I'm making money doing what I do. You know, hopefully everybody else is doing well also. But the truth is, the way recruiting works, I can come here and I can present to you. You might tell me yes. You may tell me no, in which case I'm not going to be working on this recruitment. So does that mean that I don't go and do any other presentations because I'm counting on this one happening? No, we're going to go out and do presentations because we know that when I finish these, Avalon's going to be closing very soon. Hidden Valley's already in the last stages. I'm basically at the tail end of several recruitments right now. If I don't do this come May or June, and if I'm thinking, well, I've got too much on my plate, then I may not have anything on my plate because I'm not doing presentations. Anybody who tells you that they're not out there bidding on jobs just isn't being truthful. They're trying to make money. They're trying to get as many jobs as they can as possible. That's the nature of recruiting. This is a sales type business, and they're out there trying to make as much money as they can. CPS, again, we're a nonprofit, but we're still trying to be as self-sufficient as we can. So,
What do you think distinguishes your firm from your competitors?
well, initially, being a public sector organization, again, we understand some of the issues that you face. There's a certain integrity, the relationship with the community, with the public, the fact that there's certain privacy, Brown Act, Bagley Keene, things that we are intimately aware of. I could say things like customer service, but everybody's going to tell you customer service. But quite frankly, we're a public sector organization. This is what we do. These are our nuances. They're the exact same as yours.
And what do you think your weakness is?
Personally,
Personally, business, company?
I think right now, goes back to your earlier question. For whatever reason, coming out of January, coming out the gates, we got as busy as I've ever seen us. Got an email earlier about a sergeant-at-arms position in the legislature. They said, who wants to take this? I said, with as much groundwork as that is, I don't have the capacity to do it right now. And so that's one that I actually did turn down because this position here, I've just done 4 or 5 recruitments with water districts in the last 2 years. You know, I'm guns up as far as having the outreach, having the connections, having the relationships, and just being comfortable with the language, with the buzzwords. But to go and start something like that, I don't have the capacity. And my colleagues, I saw, they were all saying the same thing. We're just very busy right now. I don't know if that's a weakness, but it's certainly something that we don't want to jeopardize our performance or the amount of service we can offer. Again, I do a bad job, you're not going to call us again. You're not going to call CPS again for anything. So we'd rather do something like that. That said, again, if it's in my wheel wagon and I can handle it, I'm going to take it on.
Thank you.
Frank, we have not had as a body a formal discussion regarding the salary component of this process. Given your many, many years of experience, what would be your recommendation as to when we have that conversation, and how, what would you recommend, developing a salary range, or coming up with not to exceed this amount, or this is the amount, you know, period? When in the process would that conversation take place, and then what would you recommend from those 3 or 4 different options?
My recommendation is always right away. Start the process with. Great example is Hidden Valley, the group I'm working with right now. They were doing a class and compensation study. They were hoping to hire somebody at the salary of their last GM. The reason last GM left is he got a $50,000 increase in pay. So they said, well, we don't know what we want to pay you. So what I did is we put on the brochure, class and comp study in process. But what I ask people to do is they talk, because some people will just email and say, I'm not going to apply for a job if I don't have a salary. And my answer is a salary range, 150 to 170, 135 to 155, something of that nature, because people will come in and say, okay, 135 works for me, I'll do the minimum. Some people will say, well, 155 isn't even enough. But if they contact me, is there any flexibility? We'll know if there's flexibility, and I'll be able to say, send your information in, let's move it forward. We're only talking about $3,000, $5,000. If somebody's up 10,000, I probably wouldn't bother. But what happened with Hidden Valley is I basically asked people, tell me what your current salary is, tell me what your salary requirements are. On that spreadsheet, basically to help my client out, I put that as a note. Current salary is this. That gave them a gauge. They ended up deciding, they went from, I think they were trying to pay at the low 100s to, I think, between 140 and 170. So they were able to see the level of talent that they wanted. And plus, they got their class and comp study back. Told them they were about 20% under. So I think posting on the brochure gives people a comfort level.
So that would be a conversation that we would have with you during that kickoff meeting, essentially.
21st, you're asking my recommendation, absolutely.
Okay. Can you expand a little bit on your process that you and your firm go through as it pertains to backgrounding the candidates? What does that all include? The
actual background check?
Yes.
Yeah, we use an agency, and actually that's in the materials I gave you there. It's basically covering felonies, misdemeanors, any kind of record they may have. Department of Motor Vehicle checks, financial checks, background checks, education, I think that, and newspaper checks if we have those too.
How about references? Do you call
I
references?
check reference. I don't. That I do something. That is something I would do before your final interviews. And I typically check anywhere from 6 to 8 references. If you ask for more, for certain positions, people said, can you check 10? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do you only check the references that are provided, or do you kind of, I don't know if you've ever gone through like a secret clearance type of process, but when you're meeting with the government agents, they always ask you at the end is, do you know anybody else that knows this individual? They're digging a little bit deeper, scratching that surface a little deeper.
We had a situation with a recruitment in the Central Valley where I got about, I think, 7 or 8 references, and they were as gushing as I'd ever seen, to the point where I didn't trust them. I mean, no one, these were gushing. So I basically went back and I said, well, so these are the references. Quite frankly, I'd like to check some of them. Well, these are great, I know, but if you were on my side of the phone, it wasn't comfortable. So I went back and got another list. It turns out, and then during that process, it got worse. It got really ugly, where this person had worked with the union on the East Coast, where people were saying things about him that just were the opposite. I mean, making accusations that they shouldn't make. I mean, just legally they shouldn't make it. So this got back to the organization. Apparently this guy, so what I did is I got more references from the guy. And now we got board members. So look, we're going to check people. And it'd be great if you could give me board members you work with, people who didn't like it. Just let's talk to people. Let's talk to everybody. If I get a set of references and they're character references, I mean, I want past managers. So what I look for is I look for past managers, people that the person actually reported to, at least 3, a couple of colleagues, and then 1 or 2 subordinates. So I get a good cross-reference. If I go beyond that, I wouldn't mind getting a couple of clients and vendors out there that they work with. You know, again, you wouldn't get the day-to-day activity, but you would get an assessment of what this person is to work with. But do I do secret references? I don't. I have not done that. But I might push it to the point where I'm offering you a 2-year guarantee. I don't want to fail you. You know, I don't want to go back and do this the second time for 2 reasons. Number one, it's credibility. I want to do it right the first time. You don't want to come back here and do it a second time.
Then, one last question, and I know you probably could rattle off dozens of stories, given your extensive
I won't.
experience. But maybe if I kind of can
Sure.
rein you in a little bit. You had mentioned just a few minutes ago that over the last couple of years, you probably worked on 4 to 5 different water district
Yeah.
recruitments. And in any of those scenarios or those recruitment process, can you kind of tell us some examples of where you felt like you really hit it out of the park and you found the perfect person that, hindsight has proven that to be so? And then, have you missed anything and have you learned any lessons, and, has there been any things that you might look back and say, hey, if I could do that differently, I might do it differently?
Tuolumne Utilities was out of the park. They had just worked.
Which one was that?
Tuolumne Utilities District, their general manager for the water side. And they had worked with another recruitment firm, didn't go well, they called me. I was told it was a difficult board. They actually told me in my meeting that there's a lot of people out there that weren't gonna like him. They actually told me they wanted to raise the rates, but they got elected with the idea that they'd never raise the rates. So, I like these guys. I mean, I hit it off with each one of them. There was another Berkeley grad up there when we spoke. I felt like, to me, when I talked to each one of them, they were in their position because they cared about the community. They cared about what they were doing. And I wanted to do everything I could in my power to work as hard as I could to make sure we did it right. So that was out of the park. I mean, and when we were done, the accolades were real strong. They sent emails. But as far as one that wasn't as great, it was Imperial Irrigation District. And the reason for it is the head of their organization basically was very outside of the scope. There wasn't a lot of interface. I was saying my updates, not getting a lot of feedback from, which is fine, they were busy. But then the climate report came up, the time to do the climate report came up, and they said, we don't need you to come out, we've seen the candidates, let's do it over the phone. So we lost that face-to-face contact. And there was just if I could have just at some point looked back on this and said, we need to meet. I mean, the thing is, you're next to Mexico, you're next to Arizona, you're out in the desert. I want to tell people about your organization. I really want them to know why they want to come to work for you. And their idea was because we pay better than everybody else. But to me, they're going to hire the highest gun, the fast, whatever it is. They're not going to get they're going to get somebody there who's going to make their money, and then they're going to be looking for the next opportunity. Because they didn't know, maybe not. Maybe they get there and they love the place. But I wasn't comfortable with the fact that when all was said and done, they were going to hire somebody who was going there only for the money, not for any other reason. And so, I mean, we put on a brochure, a great opportunity, but it was a challenge.
I'm not familiar with that district, but how did it turn out?
They hired an internal candidate.
Okay.
So they ended up hiring the next one. And he was going to do a great job. It worked out well, but what I'm referring to is throughout the process.
Yeah.
It was becoming more and more uncomfortable, and I would have liked to have just gone out there and met with people, but it was a different scenario. I wanted to respect their time, but it was also not anything that I would encourage.
What was that for general manager?
It was actually, I think the title was the next in line for that. We kept it telling the GM.
And how long ago was that? How long ago was the recruitment?
Did it happen? I think it was last year.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Did you have
Thank you,
any?
Frank.
We got a couple minutes. Do you have any questions of us at this point? I know that, I don't know what you would ask, but.
Yeah, no, I did my research. I think Mr. Lamb is retiring. You've been here 30 years. I guess that would be my question. He's been with the organization forever, been the GM for the last 6. I try to dig dirt tried to find something that was basically saying, okay, so what is the challenge gonna be? I can't find anything. Is there anything going on here that, seems like it hit your water goal, the desalination plant, the relationship? Is there something going on that will make this challenging, and you feel is?
I personally feel like this is a plum position for anyone.
Yeah.
I think that anybody looking to move up, this is the place to be, because it's a great organization, they're doing a great job, they're platinum in everything they do. So I think we're not looking for someone to come in and shake trees and rattle the earth. We're looking for someone to come in and see what's been built here over all these years and continue on. That's my personal feeling.
Yeah, it's, from a recruiting standpoint, it should be a pretty easy recruitment process, because I will echo what Director Martin said. I think that we're, as a district as a whole, I mean, we're in good financial standing, we're very innovative, we have a tremendous amount of accolades from numerous different sources, and so there's a lot to like. And then you had mentioned earlier that who wouldn't want to be in, northern San Diego County? It's a beautiful area to live and raise a family, so there's a lot of positives going.
Better than Riverside, much better.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a little difference about, I think it's gonna be very difficult, because we are a plum. You're gonna have 15 great candidates, and I don't wanna see 15. I want you to narrow it down, so I think that's gonna be the tough challenge for you.
Well, I do like to make your job as hard as possible to do a final decision, but your last GM, was he like GM of the year or something like that?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
those are big shoes to, I mean, big shoes to fill, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. And just so you know, we're not, we're gonna be discussing things after we go through all of the interviews, but we're not gonna be announcing any decisions, so you can head on home,
Oh,
whatever
right.
that may be.
Yeah.
So no need to, stick around for an hour or two, because
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not gonna learn anything.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice talking.
Nice meeting you. Yep.
Frank, thanks for coming.
All
I was
right.
just kidding, you said you're moving to Riverside, right?
Yes, I am.
That's what I was kidding about, this far back to
Well,
Riverside.
I am going to take what you said and try to convince financially.
There you go, there you go. San Diego's paradise. Riverside's next to it.
Tulare, huh?
Yeah,
That's-
you know Tulare?
that's
No?
absolutely true.
Cliff
Yes,
Lee
I
leaving,
think-
you know Cliff leaving?
I don't, but I
Okay.
graduated in '76.
Yeah, he was a little earlier, so.
Okay. I don't know anybody's ever heard Tulare.
Can we take a break? Just a quick one?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
let me just let Ann know so she can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let the,
Okay.
yeah, so if you can, let him know that we're gonna take a 5-minute break, and
Right.
we'll make up his time at the end. for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Hey, Gary. How are you?
Good, how are you all?
Good.
Good. You all?
Do you have any,
Y'all?
do you have a flash drive or any presentation you wanna set up?
What's that? I do not.
Okay. Well, then, welcome,
Thank
and
you.
thanks for responding to our RFP and coming out here and meeting with us today.
Okay.
I think while you're here, we're in search for a new GM, and we need to partner up with a recruiting firm to help us find that person. Not really a formal process today. If you could take maybe 20 or 30 minutes to introduce yourself and your firm and talk a little bit about what the process looks like for you guys.
Sure.
And then we'll follow up with 20 or 30 minutes of Q&A after that.
Okay, great.
It's all yours.
Okay. So Bob Murray and Associates has been around since 2000. So we've got 15-year track record of doing primarily public sector search work, city, county, special districts, things like that. Bob Murray, the founder of the company, is still with us. My wife and I, Valerie Phillips, who's our president, actually own the company now. And so he's kind of, as part of his retirement plan, he wanted to bring some folks on to carry his company forward. So you're talking to one of the owners for the last couple years now. I carry a lot of the more high-profile searches, mostly dealing with boards. I've done quite a bit of work. I've done a couple searches, water-related searches, just in the last couple months that I can talk about a little bit later. But the firm has a good reputation. Bob Murray is the founder. Prior to starting his own company, worked with Ralph Anderson and Associates and Maxim. So he's got 30 years of experience in the business, well known. So we feel
we feel good about the process that he's developed over the years. And, you know, we always say that ultimately it's the client's process, right? So we always try to customize the process, the recruiting process, to make sure it suits the needs of our client. So we kind of have a standard process that we recommend, but we're always willing to kind of tweak it, right, to meet the needs of our client. So if you want, so you've got a copy of our proposal, right? So we've got, it shows kind of the 11 steps of our process. There's really 10. The 11th one is just doing negotiations. And I can walk you through those steps if you'd like, if you feel that's necessary. I can talk about some of the recent searches.
Maybe at a high level, you
Yeah,
know, a quick
I mean,
overview.
Yeah, I mean, it starts for us with coming on site and meeting with the hiring body and developing a candidate profile. That's probably one of the most important things in a search, is really to understand what it is that our client's looking for. And in order to do that, we need to understand the issues and challenges that the organization is currently facing now and in the future. We then want to kind of dovetail that in with what kind of background do you think this person needs to have to be able to address those challenges? Whether it's internal restructuring that's needed, you need a change agent, you need a turnaround person, you need someone to get the budget fixed, you need someone that can handle a bunch of CIP projects, you need someone that can carry out your vision and has good customer service experience. You know, so there's always things that are a focus, and that will help us determine what kind of background we might look at. Do you want this person to have a PE and be an engineering background, or do you want their background to be in another area? So it's a critical part of the process where you get to understand from you what it is you're looking for and develop that candidate profile. And that gets blended into the ad campaign. So as we develop our brochure, we try to build into that the ideal candidate profile, what we're looking for. And then we develop a marketing campaign or an advertising campaign with you to say, okay, where does this person that we've just described, where are we going to find them, right? And we'll go to all the professional journals and organizations and advertising, all the Aqua and all the water agencies. We'll go to some other folks like BC Water Jobs, and we'll go to some of the more generic ones, Western Cities, Jobs Available. But we'll work with you to say, okay, where do we want to advertise? That's just one of the areas, one of the ways that we'll market. We also, because we've been in business so long, we've got our database has over 22,000 candidates in it. And so we're able to screen that down to other water GMs that we've dealt with in the past. And so we'll reach out to them and say, hey, who do you know that'll be a good fit for this? I usually do about 40 or 50 outbound phone calls where I'll call GMs directly. And whether or not they're looking or not, I've got relationships with a lot of them. I'll just say, hey, who do you know that think would be a good fit? And so that's very helpful. So we do direct phone calls, outbound calls. We also use LinkedIn and Twitter. And so that marketing campaign is pretty aggressive. Montecito, which is Montecito Water District, which we just completed a couple months ago, we got almost 90 applicants to that one. And those were good, qualified folks. They weren't people that owned a surf shop or anything like that, right? So we sometimes you get those. We drive people to our website, and we capture their information. So that's the marketing campaign. We usually run that for about 6 weeks minimum. We like to have a good 6 weeks of run time. Takes a couple weeks to develop a profile. So now we're about 2 months in when it closes. Once it closes, we then will screen all the resumes. We'll do a paper screen, and then I'll identify who the top candidates are that I think are worthy of a face-to-face interview with me. And a lot of times we'll use Skype depending on where they're located to try to keep costs down. And so I'll do a preliminary face-to-face or Skype interview with the candidates that I think are the best of the best. And then I'll come back on site with you folks after we've done a public record search, like a LexisNexis, to kind of make sure there's no issues out there with them. We'll vet them to a certain level. I will come out and present to you a bound book with all of the folks that I've met with, their resumes, notes from my interview. We'll talk through all the candidates. And I'll say, these are the ones I recommend that you guys interview. Ultimately, it's your decision. Once we've identified who you guys are going to move forward with, and at the same time, we'll provide you with all of the applicants and all of the resumes so that you can see them. I know with Montecito, they wanted to see all of them, And so we walked through all, they just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, and so we have no problem with providing all that information. So once we come out, we've made a recommendation, we've walked through all the candidates that I recommend, and you guys, we've come to an agreement on who's bringing forward. Then it's a matter of kind of designing a process that works for you as to how you want to interview the candidates and get down to your final. And water districts, I've seen do it a lot of different ways. I've seen it where they use a professional panel to do the first round and screen it down and only bring the ones that get through that process to the board. I've seen it the other way around where the board wants to take the first pass and screen it down and put the final 2 or 3 in front of a professional panel. So I'd like to have a staff panel as well, so we can do a multiple panel process, so you can get input from department heads. But we can talk about how that process should look that meets your guys' needs. We can make recommendations on that. We've got questions that we've used with other water agencies, so we can provide recommendations and kind of sample questions that can be asked. And so we help facilitate that whole process. We come back out on site. So that third, now on my third trip out, that first one was kind of to do the needs assessment and develop a candidate profile. Second time I come out is to do the recommendations based on my preliminary interviews. And then that third time I come out, I'm going to manage the interview process and be here to facilitate that. And whether that's with you for the first round, and then once we get it down to finalists, we then will take those 2 or 3 finalists and we'll do a full background and reference check on your finalists. And so that's where we're going to use we use a company called HireRight, and say they do credit, criminal, civil, education verification. So they'll fully vet their backgrounds. And then we do 2 of each of the subordinate, a peer, and a boss as far as reference checks. A lot of times we'll call folks that they didn't give us as well, because we know folks in other, so depending on where they come from, so a lot of times we like to make a few extra phone calls on the reference side. We do a thorough reference check, so that when the finalists come back, you know that now they've been fully vetted, from our company. And then that second round, what we did in Montecito, they wanted to have it go through they did the first round, got it down to 2 or 3 finalists that they liked, had those folks come back, go through a panel in the morning, so they had 3 candidates that met with it, and they had a combined panel that had some GMs from neighboring districts, and then they had they had a smaller staff, so they had a couple department heads. Went through the panels. I deliberate with those folks at lunchtime, so they come in the morning, they meet with the candidates. I get a strengths and weaknesses assessment feedback from those folks. I let them know, I said, this is the board's hire, right? So your job is not to pick or rank or anything. It's the board's hire, but they're very interested in getting your feedback. So I collect a strengths and weaknesses assessment from each one. The board comes in at lunchtime. Over lunch, we discuss the feedback that I got from the panels, and that helps shape the kind of the questions for the afternoon. Candidates come back in the afternoon, and if the professional panel had some concerns about a particular candidate, it'll allow them to drill down maybe in a certain area that they didn't realize that it was an issue. And so that's kind of the process, one of many processes that we can use. And then we use a forced ranking process to kind of help the board get it down to a final candidate. Once you guys have got it down to a final candidate that you all agree to, then we help with negotiations as well. So we've negotiated both of the contracts for the last 2 water districts that I did GMs for. In fact, one of them was just finally announced last night.
Who was that?
Combe. It's actually I wouldn't call it a water district, the Kachuma Operating and Maintenance Board. They manage the pipeline out of Lake Kachuma that delivers water to 5 different water districts in the south. So that one's Santa Barbara. In fact, the way I wound up doing that one is one of the board members from Montecito was also on that board, and he was so happy with the work that we did in Montecito, they hired us to do their GM as well at home.
Okay, super. Anything else?
I don't think so. So that's kind of in a nutshell how our process works.
Okay. I'll start off with Director Martin, since I started off with the other two before.
Okay. And San Diego County, you didn't really give us a list of firms that you've dealt with, but in San Diego County, have you dealt with any water districts before?
I have not dealt with any water districts in San Diego County. Probably the closest one, they're not San Diego County, but we recently did a GM search for United Water, which is up in Oxnard.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like your timeline. Actually, what we're looking at, if you have your planner with you, is the 21st, tentatively, we've kind of discussed a few dates, but the 21st of this month is having a decision right after this meeting tonight, which Jeff Scott will get a hold of you on, but then having our first meeting, a primary meeting on the 21st, if possible. Is that possible with you?
Well, the 21st for me, I am in Santa Barbara in panels all day long, so I wouldn't be able to do the 21st.
Okay.
So is this for a kickoff meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could probably, how much time do you guys think that would take?
Well, you tell us.
Yeah.
How long is the kickoff meeting?
Typically, as involved as you guys want it to be, if you're planning on having it like a closed session to discuss it, are you guys gonna,
It has to be an open meeting.
an open meeting?
On the
Okay.
kickoff?
Well, I think we
No.
can, because we can get it down to specific candidates now, I think we can get into closed session
Okay.
issues, personnel
Okay. That'd be
issues, so we
cool.
The
can.
the other
Yeah.
possibility, a lot of the water districts, they appoint a ad hoc committee.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
Okay.
No,
We
it's
tried
gonna be
that.
all this.
Okay, all right,
I tried that early.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that ain't gonna-
No, I mean, I think it would be
Oh,
a
for
formal kickoff meeting, closed session. I've never done this before, so I would definitely be curious to see what your thoughts are, but I can't imagine it'd be less than 2 hours.
No.
We'd have to have some conversations as it pertains to salary
Sure.
and stuff like that.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I don't see that being a possibility on the 21st for me.
Okay.
What's your availability
That
as
week.
close to that date as possible? And let me tell you why we want to move this process forward rapidly, but
Yeah.
we have the Aqua Conference coming up on the 3rd of May, and the next question is coming up is, can you get the brochure done for that conference?
In 10 days.
10 or 9
7,
days.
whatever.
So yes, we could. We can get a brochure done in that amount of time, as long as we've got, there's a couple steps in that process, right? We need to draft it, get it to you guys, get approval, but our printer can get it done, can actually, once we have an approved thing, get it done in 4 days, right? So it's a
Okay.
matter of just getting that feedback. So I would suggest if we could even go before the 21st then, just based on that timeline.
What's your
availability?
See if I can get my calendar up here.
And I'm looking for mine as well.
well, we had, didn't we, all answer the request, our availability? We have that email on your,
Well, yeah, but can you remember everybody's dates?
no, but it's all in one spreadsheet.
Yeah, I don't have,
Oh, you
you
don't
have a
have it?
spreadsheet?
I could do the day before, the 20th.
That's a Wednesday, right?
Yeah. We have a
That's our regular board
It's
meeting.
our board meeting.
So is it possible to go into
Monday or
close?
Friday?
Can you do it on the tail end of your board meeting?
If we start earlier.
We have some pretty heavy board meetings coming
Oh,
up, my
yeah.
understanding is.
Yeah, that might be a little
How
aggressive.
about Monday or Friday of that week? So I think most people were available.
No, I'm not available at all on the 18th, which is Monday.
Okay, so Monday's up.
So I think Friday, I could do Friday.
The 22nd?
Yeah.
Yeah? But
Friday?
if we, if we can do it, I don't want to start at 4 o'clock and go to 7 on Friday.
Yeah, I'm available all day. I'll be done in so I'll be in Santa Barbara already, and I would just head down here.
2 hours, yeah.
Yeah, from Santa Barbara, and I could be here in the morning.
Yeah?
You do what?
Jim, you said you were only available 9 to 12.
Well, yeah.
I could do 9 to 12 on Friday.
Well, I mean, we can go a little longer, but I don't want to start at
Okay.
1 or 2 and go to 7.
Oh, but you can start at 12 and go
Oh,
to,
yeah, I could start at 12.
okay, 12 or 1, any way you can get there?
I don't think so. I could probably get as early as maybe 3.
No.
3 will be done by 6.
Yeah.
That's the latest.
Still before, it's 3 hours at the most.
We will be done at 6. Probably less, but I think we're gonna be agreeing on most things. Most, no, I think on this we will.
Well, let's
You'll be home
let's
having,
keep
you'll
moving
be having a
forward.
nightcap at 5:30 at your house.
So you're available on 22nd, so.
I am
yeah.
available on the 22nd. I prefer to start
Well, we can.
noonish at the latest. That's what I
We
prefer.
we can hash that out
Yeah,
amongst
okay.
ourselves.
Yeah, let's,
You know,
at least we know.
All right.
And then that gives you, that's a tough time. I'm just,
But that'll give you more than ample time to
7,
get your brochures
8,
done.
9, well, it's 10 days, like you said, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
You also
pushing it.
mentioned Monday, I'm available Monday in the morning, up until I've got a meeting at 5.
No, I'm gonna be in Los
Oh.
Angeles all day
Okay.
on the 18th.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
But,
So tentatively Friday is what we're looking at, we'll hash it out.
Okay.
yeah.
So to go back, was that the questions? I think it
Yeah.
was, yeah. So the
yeah.
timeline we're bringing up, hopefully, was that we'd be able to have a brochure, and that would move your whole time. We're looking at, is August 1st reality? 3 months, is that enough time for you to get all this, for us to all get this accomplished?
To get to where you've got an accepted offer,
Yeah.
that's gonna be tight. I mean, there's a few places where we can shorten things. You know, we can shorten the ad cycle a little bit, and we can, you know, if we lay out a schedule in advance, you know, it'll be kind of pushing it.
Okay.
Is that when your current chief?
No, he's already gone.
No, he's already gone.
And I guess,
We'll have an interim in all probability.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're just trying to, or at least I, do not want this to continue for 4 months, and the
No,
question.
when it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It may last that long, because that's the question we've heard from others is, okay, this guy got a job, he's not gonna drop it today, he's gonna give, Encina, that was a full month and a half,
Yeah.
so, I mean.
2-month notice, usually pretty accurate.
You know, the last couple I've done were 30-day notices,
Mhm.
you know, so.
Okay. Yeah,
So, okay, so it's doable.
It's
possible.
something
Okay.
doable.
Guarantee, so we hire this man or woman, and for whatever reason, they don't work out.
Mhm.
9 months, we're unhappy, they're unhappy, somebody leaves, whatever happens. We come back at you and go, let's try this again. Do we get a deal from you? Do you have a guarantee of any type?
Is free a good enough deal?
No, that's an excellent deal.
So with the caveat, expenses only, so
Right.
no professional fees, but whatever our hard costs are, and usually, if we said on here 6,900, assume it would be less than 6,900 bucks, but
And
yeah,
that's 2 years?
1 year,
1 year.
yeah.
So we have to call you 363 days out and say, hey,
Yeah.
it ain't working.
Yes, and I've gotten those calls,
Okay.
and we honor them.
Okay, integrity, this is your firm's integrity.
Mhm.
And I know you've been around, and I happen to be on a board that we used Bob Murray, and he did an excellent job for us.
Great.
And we didn't have to call him for 363 days, so that was really nice. My question is, we act as a board, there's 5 of us,
Mhm.
and Brown Act violations, we don't want to get involved in.
Sure.
How have you dealt in the past with boards of 5 that act as one, when an individual from that board contacts you, or a staff member
Mhm.
contacts you, and says, hey, what's going on? How do you handle that with the rest of the board? And then again, integrity meaning that we work as a full body, individuals shouldn't be talking to you, employees or board members.
Right.
Except at a meeting.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I take the Brown Act very serious. Not too long ago, I had a city near the Mexico border that hired us. And we went into contract with them, and within 2 weeks, I had those kind of issues. And it was serious enough that I exercised our right in our agreement to walk away from the contract. And I basically said, I can't, you guys aren't ready for an outside firm to come in there. You need to fix some things. So I called their contract attorney, and I told them that I wasn't gonna be able to work with them. Because they were asking me to blind copy them on things with conversation, don't tell this one that, and I just, I'm like, so to me, I take it very serious, and the firm, our reputation is very important to us.
It was
so I will-
classical.
Huh? I didn't say that.
And the last question is, do you find, that especially in special districts, that most new hires are contracts? Or you think they work at will?
Well,
Or is there an even split? I don't know.
well, just because you have a contract doesn't mean you're not still at will.
Right.
Right. It's funny you bring that up because Montecito had a big problem with the word contract. They wanted it to be an employment agreement, which it kind of was
Yeah.
the same thing, but they had an experience where they had a contract with a previous GM, and it's just the way the contract was written on the way out the door. They wound up having to pay the guy a lot of money, and they weren't happy with that. And so my experience is that most GMs have a contract, but we just recently did an employment agreement. The term, you know, it always comes down to the term of the contract, right? Contracts usually have a term to them, and the question becomes, well, you know, we do a 5-year contract. What if we don't like, you know, just as a 5-year contract doesn't mean you have to, you know, stay with them for 5 years. It's still an at-will contract. Really, the key comes down to severance, right? That's what that's the issue, right? What is severance gonna be? And severance, right now, the standard, we're seeing it kind of across the board with 6 months. We're not seeing the 9 months and the 1-year severances that used to be out there. And I think city managers have kind of driven that down, because city managers are, you know, their tenures these days are getting shorter and shorter, and so city governments are starting to, you know, getting tired of paying out those big severances. So I think however you structure it, whether you call it a contract or an employment agreement, it's still at will, whether it's a multi-year or not. We always recommend to do a 3-year term, so that you're not having to, as soon as your GM's in his barely finishes the first year, you already have to be thinking about doing his review, right? You want to give him some legs. We suggest putting annual reviews built in there. But if you got a 6-month severance built in there, you need to let him know before he gets to the 6 months if he's not doing a good job.
Are most people that you bring forward looking for this? I guess we have a GM that doesn't have any of that.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes, Hal, and we will have a written contract, and we will have some very, I think, important discussions with respect to severance and all the meanings of, you know, the person is going to serve at your pleasure, okay? There's no question about that.
Right.
It's just what are gonna be the, you know, how the length in 3 years is probably a very good suggestion, how you're gonna evaluate it, and most importantly is if you get to a point where you're not happy, then that's when the severance kicks in. We have to be very clear about that. And for somebody that's just coming into the position, that's something they're gonna be very interested in the sense that, hey, I've sacrificed to come here, whatever, and I wanna make sure that I have some protection. So whether 3 months or 4 months or 6 months is something you guys are gonna decide and make the
So
make the
that
rules.
is something that's expected out there in the workforce today, which wasn't 32 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because reporting to an elected body, or a board of any kind.
Tough job.
Well, there's change, right? So he could come in here and these 5 people that you appoint him, it's a 5-0 unanimous vote, and you all love him, and then there's an election, and there's a couple new people come in, and so to no fault of theirs, it's that change element that makes them look for a little bit of protection.
Thank you very much.
You're
All right, unless I read the original submittal, where does Joel fit into this program?
Well, Joel was originally the recruiter. He works for me.
Yeah.
And he was originally who we were gonna have handle this search, but then when we got the letter that said whoever was gonna do the search needed to be here, and he was booked for this day and couldn't be here. So
You're the man?
I'm the man.
Okay,
Yeah, so.
that answered that.
So we don't like to do bait and switches, you know.
We don't either.
So.
Yeah, it hasn't worked in the past.
And so rather
Never
than, you
works.
know, we tried to rearrange his schedule so we could get him down here, and we couldn't, and I said, well, I'll go down and do it, and if they like us, I'll do the search.
Okay, now that's a great answer. How many other searches are you doing?
Right now, I have got 5 searches, and 3 of them are closing out in the next few weeks. So my count's pretty low right now. I try to keep my search count pretty low.
What do you think your firm's uniqueness is that distinguishes you against your competitors?
You know, I'll be honest, my competitors, and I don't know who else you're talking to, but the ones that we're usually up against, they're all good, right? And there's a half a dozen of us out there that do a good job. I don't know if we're unique, but I know that we take a personalized approach to every one of our searches, right? We get fully invested in understanding the organization that we're going to work for, and we're available 7/24. I eat, sleep, and breathe this. My wife and I, we own the company, and so we sit at home at dinner and talk about searches and talk about candidates that we know. And so you'll all have my cell phone. I'm always available. And to me, I come from a customer service background. And to me, it's just about being responsive, being organized, and what we do is very structured, and it's a good process. And one of the things that I think is unique, we get a lot of candidates that call us and then become clients, because when they get put into positions where they can hire a firm, they hire us, and they say, you know, the thing about Bob Murray & Associates that we thought was different is the way you handle the candidates. And sometimes that gets lost. And so we take it upon ourselves to make sure that the candidates, whether they move forward or not, whether they're selected or not, whether they get rejected early on, they get return phone calls. If somebody doesn't move forward in a process, they hear directly from me. They don't get a letter, they don't get an email. If they made it into the screening, I call them all. And so that's one of the things that I don't, and I'm not saying that the other firms don't do that, but we take pride in making sure that the candidates feel good about the process as well.
And then what do you think a weakness you guys may have?
You know, I don't know if I would say we have a weakness or not. I know that for a while there was a perception that maybe we carried too many searches. And I think that was before my wife and I took it over. And so, you know, I think we're now a little bit more of a boutique firm. We used to have an office in Florida, and we used to do national, be more of a national firm. And we've scaled it back to just the 11 western states, and we closed down that Florida office so that we can put a little more focus. And so right now, I think, you know, my wife and I are trying to carry on the reputation of the firm, but do it in a small, more boutique manner, so we can get personalized.
The question I had relative to our RFQ suggested that we would like to see you a couple times a month. That way I can pencil it out, you're gonna be here, looks like 3 times.
Mhm.
And then if we wanted more meetings, it would be a $1,500 charge.
Yeah.
If we wanted just either, we might be able to Skype something, but at least a phone conversation or some kind of additional information at a meeting where you didn't have to be here, would that be an additional fee?
No, that's unlimited, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you guys, I'll do a half a dozen of those in most searches.
Okay.
Yeah, throughout the process.
Okay. I think that covered all my bases.
Director Oliver? Yeah, the only additional thing I had was, could you maybe expand on your philosophy on the scope of the search? You alluded to it a little bit, that you're more regionally focused. Is that kind of how you approach it?
So when we're developing our ad campaign with you, as part of the kickoff, we're gonna talk about that scope. And so you guys are gonna tell me if you're open to, candidates from nationwide. And so we can advertise, we can cast that net as wide as you want. So sometimes folks will say, we really want somebody from California that's got California water experience. Some might say, 11, the reason why we kind of target 11 western states is we find a lot of times that it's much easier for candidates to transition from those states to California. When you start talking about a East Coast transfer to West Coast, it gets expensive, right? I mean, just the relocation costs can get over $100,000.
Sticker shock.
Yeah, and if you guys are, if you guys are gonna want to pay those expenses, and if you say you're not, well, the candidate, so a lot of times we just run into a lot of issues with the national folks. Yeah. But we can always cast that net wide and then screen it down and see if we get a candidate that's, from back east and we think he's got a great background. I actually wound up having a candidate from back east in my Montecito search that had California experience and had left to go back to family and wanted to get back to California. They thought he was great. They actually brought him out for an interview. He wasn't the ultimate candidate, but it can happen.
Great, thanks.
One of the discussions that we have not had yet as a board, but will be very shortly, is kind of all the inner workings around choosing a salary, and obviously going through the benchmarking process. And but based off of your experience, what kind of guidance would you give us? Would you recommend coming up with a salary range, coming up with a number that's not to be exceeded, or coming up with just a firm number?
So there usually goes one of two ways for us, either a salary range or a DOQ, depending on qualifications. Don't even put a number at all. And that way you kind of leave it
Sorry,
open.
what's the DOQ?
Dependent on qualifications.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that, and that's quite common to do that, because that way you're not really gonna exclude anybody. And then if I know a target, right, if I know the range and I know a target, when I'm screening people and talking to people, then I'll have the conversation with them at that point about where it's gonna be. And if there's somebody that's way out, way too expensive, I'll have that conversation with them. But DOQ's pretty common. If your salary is competitive and it's good, and we think, hey, that's actually a selling feature, then we would put that range in there. I've often found that when you put a range in, they want the top.
Yeah.
Right? So, so that's the only downside. So usually, so if we do wind up putting a range in, but your target, where you really want to bring somebody in, is at the bottom third of that, then as long as I know that, I'll tell them when I'm having the conversation. I'll say, yeah, their range says, 180 to 220, but really where they want to bring somebody in is at 190. Unless you're just really a rock star or whatever, so.
Yeah, that's funny, because when you see a range, and when you're looking at real estate, you always, as the buyer, you're always, I want to come at the lowest, right? So it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about your background, and I liked what you had to say there, so I'm not going to ask my regular question on that. As the co-owner of the company, I'm sure that you've handled a lot of different recruitments. Can you give us kind of a specific example of one that you're really happy and proud of how it turned out, and it was you knocked it out of the park? And then can you give us another example of one where if you look back afterwards and said, we didn't get that one right, and that there's some lessons learned, and kind of how that all worked out?
Yeah. So it's funny. There's quite a few that I'm really proud of right now, but I'm going to talk about Montecito just because it is a water district and it is recent. When they originally approached our firm, they were pretty adamant that they wanted the actual recruiter to have recently done a water GM search, not just the firm. Our firm has done a ton of them, and so I had a couple of my recruiters that recently completed water. They weren't available. And so I got on the phone with them, I did a conference call with them, and there's a couple attorneys on this board, and their characters, and at the time they really rode me hard, and I said, you know what, my firm's reputation is really important, and they gave me a schedule that I couldn't really work with. It was just unrealistic. And I told them, I said, we're probably not the best firm. And I referred them to one of my competitors, and I said, I think they might be able to meet your schedule. I haven't done a water search, my water guys aren't available. I said, I think it's best if we don't take this one. And they said, well, what about you? Can you do it? I said, I can, but I haven't recently completed, finished a water search. And they reluctantly hired me. And I said, but this has got to be the schedule. This is a more realistic schedule. And so we came on board. And so I was starting with a group of folks that really didn't have a lot of confidence in me. And long story short, and they were very very detail-oriented, very involved. I told you that they had 90 applicants, they wanted to review every single resume with me, and, you know, I sat down and worked with them at the end. Those two attorneys that were actually the ad hoc committee, they pulled me aside and they both said, Gary, I didn't really see the value in even using a search firm to begin with, and then I really wasn't sure about you, but you did such a great job, you can use this as a reference. And so, Charles Newman and Dick Shankowitz are the two attorneys in Montecito Water District, and you're welcome to call them both and ask them how, you know, their experience with me. So to me, I took pride in that because I had to really earn it. I wasn't just writing on the reputation of the firm. I had to go in there and roll up my sleeves and show them. And in the end, they hired a great GM that I just called. I always call and check in a month or two after how things going. I just called and talked to the director of finance there. And he said, oh my God, it's such a breath of fresh air. He's doing great. And so that's an example of one where, you know, I was really proud of that. I'm trying to think of one that went bad recently, and you know, I can't say that I've had any where it went horrible. We've had one where at the end of the recruitment, the advertising, I looked at the candidate pool and I just didn't feel like we had a strong enough candidate pool. And to me that's a failure, right? But I called, you know, I met with them, and I said, look, here's the deal. I don't feel comfortable bringing any of these folks forward. We got a couple options. We can extend the recruitment, or I can just start all over and go back out. And they said, well, what do you suggest? And I said, extend it 3 weeks. Let me just make a bunch of phone calls and see if I can find some candidates. And so that's what we did. We extended it 3 weeks. I went out and did, and, you know, no more advertising. It was just me making phone calls, and I was able to bring a strong candidate pool to them, and we were able to get some. When I look back on it, I think we kind of missed the mark in our original target outreach. We put help lists together, and I looked at those help lists, and I was like, why did we not get the candidate pool? And so, in retrospect, I felt like I could have reviewed that list a little better.
Thank you. That's all I got. Do you have any questions of us?
I don't think so. I mean, you've told me that you've got a pretty tight timeline, but I think we can work within it. I did spend some time researching, you know, your water district, and I was actually very impressed. I think you guys have a well-run district. I mean,
We like it.
Your GM got GM of the year?
Yep.
That's gonna be tough shoes to fill, right? No pressure.
It was political, I think,
It doesn't translate to dollars.
You should know that was transparency, for transparency of the district.
Yeah, I know,
And
that's,
the openness, we're now televised, a lot of things that he has brought into position. Done a great job. I have one question. You said earlier that you didn't really want to go to Mendocino. This is a tough question for you, I know. So you referred to someone else. Who to?
that was Joel Bryden.
Who's he with?
Oh, no, you're talking about Montecito.
Montecito, yeah.
Yeah, Montecito.
You see, you didn't really want to take the job, so you referred them to somebody else.
Ralph Anderson. Yeah. They're another firm that has a great reputation. We know them well.
Anyone particular, Ralph Anderson, that you recommended it to, or just that agency?
Just in general, Heather, who's the owner there, usually everything kind of goes through her, but she's got a good group.
I do have just a general question. I'm an architect, we do these kind of things, it's the 5 families in San Diego do everything. Is that kind of a similar arrangement with consultant groups like yourself? I mean, Ralph Anderson, you know, and, I mean, is there half a dozen of you folks that show up usually?
You know, there's half a dozen of us that primarily do it, but there's a lot of individual guys out there that are doing it as well that I probably don't know. You know, the top ones that I could list off here, we run into each other all the time with these kind of things, and you know, we get along. And, you know, we they do good work, we do good work. Okay.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Mentioning when, what decision?
Yeah, so we're going to spend this evening talking about all the applicants, and then Jeff will be reaching out to to communicate an announcement probably sometime in the next 24 hours, I would imagine.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to present to you guys. Good luck whether you choose us or not. I wish you the best. I love to work with you guys, but if you don't, I hope it goes well.
Okay, well, thanks.
Thank you, Gary. Thank
Have
you
a
very
safe trip
much.
home.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right.
You guys need a break or anything before we get started, or just
Not now.
keep moving?
Anything else?
Okay. Any initial thoughts on the last presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked him. I think, you know, the interesting thing about measuring him against Gary, the other Gary, okay, so Phillips to the first Gary, Ralph Anderson, was I think we all agree that if we had a choice, we would take Heather. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We would take Heather, but. this
Even their
is-
competition is they go get Heather.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Heather'd be the one, but we're not gonna get her.
Nope.
So we'd be getting Gary. He seemed very likable, very transparent, very open, very well, and he's one of the owners of the company, so he has a reputation of really, he's not gonna bounce to another company.
Got a bigger stake in it.
He's got a bigger stake in coming up with something. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that, but the one thing you gotta be careful with dealing with directly the owner is he really truly going to be our point of contact and going to have the laser focus that we're looking for, or is he gonna delegate it to other folks because the entire company works for him?
But he said
Well,
he was.
the good news that I heard was that he's only got 5 now, and 3 of them are closing, so it will be an opportunity that, you know, I do think, and I really, his answer about Joel, when he showed up, I was going, man, I'm sure I read it, that Joel was gonna,
Yeah.
well, he stepped up. I think I gave him serious
Here's
high
Joel
points for
getting
that.
everything.
And, that's an extra one, but, candidate contact, he was the only one that talked about contacting the candidates themselves, not, you know, and some other, in any other conversation.
Well, he did say they conduct a fact-finding check on the final 3 that we come up with. They do that automatically with all of them, which I like, because the other 2 didn't. They just waited for the last one. He made a decision to go with this guy, and then they do a background check, and then you find he's wanted in Wisconsin, or one of those states.
And I know for
We've had that.
professionals, you know, you're not supposed to look at the price, but his
Oh, I didn't
price.
look at that.
You didn't? Well, his price is just a bit smidge taller than CPS and seriously lower than Ralph Anderson.
Oh.
So his price point is, got some, you know, allure to it. I like the guy.
I like them all. I mean, I think that if I had to rank them 1, 2, 3, it would probably be, it's a toss-up for me between CPS and Bob Murray. But it's between those 2. I really liked Gary. I have a deep appreciation for folks that do law enforcement and have a tremendous amount of respect for their integrity, but I think he's just kind of too new on the job. I mean, just- So, for me, it's between the last 2. But I don't have strong feelings either way, so I could go either way, so I'll default to you guys, but.
Yeah, I kinda had it the same way. It was kind of the last 2 were kind of a toss-up for me, but Ralph Anderson not that much further behind, kind of close third. What I liked is, and kind of the knock I've always heard about Bob Murray is that they're too big, you're just a number, you know, you don't really get personalized service. And what I liked is that he admitted himself that they had kind of gotten that reputation, and then when they kind of took ownership, they kind of stepped back and kind of changed that. So that was really good to hear.
That's right, yeah, they pulled out of Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked his honesty about that, so, yeah, I think, I think I would be good with either CPS or Bob Murray.
You know, with regard to CPA, it's interesting, and I forgot to ask him, because in his RFQ, he calls the other members consultants. And I'm wondering if, because they're GPA, they're individual who then has a consultant to help them to finish the program or to assist in the program, as opposed to CPS is a firm with people underneath it. Now that,
I think they're a firm, because kind of looking at their website and
Ah.
seeing how they're structured,
oh,
it's pretty clear that they got teams and
Okay,
they work for,
all right,
you know,
well then-
they're,
but my first choice is the Bob Murphy guy with the owner.
Then
Garrett.
I would make a motion, and everyone seems pretty well, that we go with Mr. Phillips from Bob Murray and Associates, and
Second.
have our attorney draw up the necessary contract to
Mhm.
protect us in making sure that we get delivered exactly what we ask for. And setting it up, now, that's the other thing we have to start talking about, is that, well, let's do that motion.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Now we need to come up with a date and time.
That was the one thing, is that he was not available on the 21st.
At
Well,
that time.
At that time, well,
No, at
no,
all.
at all, yeah, no. And
22nd,
Friday was, the
22nd,
alternate date.
22nd.
Well, we can do the 22nd, if we can start at 3 o'clock
We'll be
and
done by 5-ish.
whatever, you know,
Can you do that?
yeah.
I think a
I'll
lot of it
rearrange.
too,
Bite the bullet.
I think a lot of the time-consuming part of this, and we can discuss in detail at the next closed session, is if we can get our consensus on what we want to do from a salary standpoint, and that way we kind of we're not coming to it and having that discussion that night, then that'll save us a tremendous amount of time.
And also, I would like us to, whether we chat about it now or whatever, you know, one of the things that we heard at the conference and then in Encina was the discussion the consultant may have with who else in the organization. The staff managers, just to get their input, yes or no. This panel of professionals that he mentioned prior to minimize how many people actually get to our decision-making process. I don't know if that resonated with anybody. Either one of those two.
Very poorly.
Yeah, he was the only one that talked about that panel, and I'd have to get some more information on it before I could say I liked it or not.
well,
But I think we are the panel.
I think we are ultimately the panel that has to make that decision for our ratepayers.
Mhm.
We can use help, but the problem is, with a hand-selected blue ribbon panel, is you get people in there that shouldn't be there. And the same thing sometimes with employees, and I know you had a good response to it at one time, but employees, you know, sometimes they're gonna give you from their, not the truth, but really from their perception. If they're happy with their job, if they wanna move up, I don't know, but we can discuss that in the future.
The other thing I'm concerned about too is that I would assume that the majority of the applicants are already gonna be employed somewhere, and they're gonna be extremely sensitive that their confidentiality remains, and the more people that you put them in front of, the more likely that confidentiality is gonna leak out somewhere in the
No,
process.
but perhaps I didn't make it clear. I wasn't interested in perhaps staff or management staff being part of any professional panel. It was more getting input on the criteria, so that if we find out that, I don't know what we find out, but
I see what you're
are we
saying.
interested in letting members of the senior management team put criteria into, well, we don't want somebody that's 5'5". We gotta have somebody that's 6
Well,
feet.
you know, if you look at, it's kind of a funny thing, if you look at the criteria in all the brochures, it's all pretty generic. I
Is
mean,
it?
Everybody says we want somebody that works well, but who doesn't want somebody that
Yeah,
does,
exactly.
that doesn't work?
Well,
well?
then-
Long walks on the beach,
Yeah.
yeah.
But now that now that you clarified, I could see this as being a good learning opportunity for us, and also a good gesture the employees of the district.
Absolutely.
If we did happen to have a committee, then I think that would be a thing that a committee could actually, through Dennis and Tom, they could maybe select 5 employees kind of randomly, that a committee could come and sit down in the conference room and say, hey, what are you looking for in here? And that might go a long way.
I think the authorship of that, the input would do that, just that. And not just have it be, oh, well, just.
But again, I think it all comes, apparently we're the only district that's going through this process without a committee. Because all 3 of them said, oh yeah, I work with the committee. So I don't know why we were so anti-committee, but, we may want to reconsider that. Because we're the only ones doing it without one.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like Encina, they didn't do it at all, they just went,
Yeah,
done.
but it sounded like they already had their decision made before.
Yeah, pretty much so.
Go ahead.
I think an important thing to realize in the future we can discuss this is that if you get a group of staff together with Dennis, as we all witness here on a weekly basis, staff will look at
Oh,
Dennis.
no, I know, so.
Dennis will do
let
all
me-
the talking.
No.
So there's no
Dennis,
reason.
I would utilize Dennis and Tom as the leadership in the organization to set those meetings up and select, however they wanna do it from a random standpoint. But they wouldn't actually be in the meeting. It would be
Oh.
it would just be the employees that either volunteered to do it because they wanted to do it, or maybe it's a way he wants to reward employees or for, good performance, however they wanna do it, but.
Well, and I think what you're asking is how do we include some input from the employees in this process? And maybe that's what the recruitment, what Gary's gonna help you with when you guys meet. Maybe it could be a subject you guys talk about at that point, see what he thinks and based on his
Yeah,
experience.
maybe Gary
How
meets
you
with
can
them.
do it,
Yeah, okay.
How you can do it, because it is good for morale, and you're trying to get some input, not have them make the decision, but basically get some input. So, now, what day did we decide that we're gonna do this?
22nd.
Okay, so that's the regular board meeting?
No,
Friday.
Okay, so that'll be Friday, and at what time did you wanna do it?
3 PM.
3 PM? Okay.
One thing I would like to bring up, I think, a couple of things. Some of our candidates, probably some of our really good candidates will be coming from potentially San Diego.
Yeah.
So this board has got to keep their mouth shut when they find out who they are, because they could maybe have their jobs in jeopardy. And a lot of them might not apply thinking that's going to happen. So it's up to us to make sure that's totally confidential
Well, and think,
between whoever we decide, who we picked and us, and nowhere else. Because there's no such things as secrets, especially in a small town like San Marcos.
The water industry is a small community.
Yeah, but, and all we have to do is intimate that we know something. Second thing that I'd like to be brought up was, if there's no cost to it, there could be an advantage. I think you need someone with California experience, but there could be an advantage to opening it up, because you might find that guy that's already moved out of California that wants to move back.
Yeah,
That's why I
that
asked
happens.
this question.
That was a really good question, because that's what, the city manager here in San Marcos did. He had left Chula Vista, moved up north to have a couple of years to get his GM under him, and then came back down and doing a wonderful job.
Bullshit.
So, I think that could be a question. That could be, 11 states. Maybe that's because, in the beginning, my mind was saying, well, you want someone from California. Yeah, but they may have gone somewhere else, so.
Now, did you wanna talk the salary range at the next meeting
Yes.
on Wednesday in
yeah,
closed
in
session?
closed session.
And
But
could we ask you to put together, to have our GM put together a list of comparables? Now, that's not the comp that we've seen, where he's comparing himself to Padre Dan and Marie Stapleton. We want comparables as to what he does here with 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we really want comparables of, I think, if there are any.
Before I forget though,
Okay.
to piggyback off of Director Martin's comments about confidentiality, which I agree 100%. But when we get to that point, we may want to actually hold the interviews off-site at a hotel conference room or something like that, because it's pretty obvious for all the employees and everybody else around, when people are walking in here, they know that, okay, well, that's a GM candidate, right? So is it normal to have these types of things off-site? And
Yeah, I would say.
I mean, you know, yeah, no, it's a little unusual, but I think your point's well taken, and it's certainly, as long as we do it within the district here, it's an easy thing to do, you know, I mean, we can certainly accommodate that.
Again, not to bring it up, but the city did it to Marriott.
Yeah.
As long as it's off-site, because you have people that might be applying for this job don't wanna walk in our front door with our employees seeing who they are.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Hey,
that's, goes,
this guy
that
came
blows
in
the
for a
because
driver.
everybody knows everybody in this business, and,
Exactly.
you know, so-and-so was over at, yeah,
And they
it's
know
not.
their cars, and they know
Yeah.
everything about them, so, yeah, I think that would be great.
Mhm.
Diane can call up and, when that point comes, and they have a small conference room downstairs, you can put a U-shaped table in, and
Yeah.
I would ask that somebody obviously notify Betty, but also if it appears that, you know, she's not gonna be well enough to make this meeting, that she put down her expectations so they
Mhm.
can be delivered. I think that's only respectful for our board members.
Sure.
anything else
Oh, you know, I took care of
with that? How does it, well, I guess we can talk about this during the salary conversation, but do you expect much negotiation around benefits, and do some, I mean, you know, in the private sector, when you're dealing with executives, they have some weird perks sometimes, like Carly had a private plane, you know, I mean, I know we're not talking about that, but there's, you know, a private bathroom, I mean, there's just weird things that come
No,
up.
I think you've got, you know, because you've got such a good benefit package with PERS, that's not gonna be the issue. There might be some discussion about a car allowance. There might be, but I think if you set the salary enough, I think I'd stay away from those things from a legal standpoint. I think you're better served not to get into that. But the big fight's gonna be over. You need to be thinking about what, you know, on the one hand, I know you wanna be conservative about the severance issue, but that's an issue, and sometime, it needs to be, we need to get that, basically feel comfortable with that going in, so that whether it's 4 months or 6 months, which is probably what you're gonna get to, it's a lot of money, okay? And it's a pill you have to swallow if you put it in your contract. That's why sometimes you don't, you know, one of the reasons it's different here, because we've had a long history of not having written contracts. So this hasn't been something that you had to deal with, but that's over now. That's changed. Everybody's gonna expect a written contract. And so now you gotta deal with it, and we gotta be real clear that, hey, if the board wakes up some morning and decides you're out of here, he or she, this is what the deal is. You're gonna get severance, you may or may not get some medical, you know, that extended for that period of time, but those are the kinds of things that are expensive, but they're things you need to be thinking about. And probably, if you're trying to be conservative, 4 months would probably be the low end, and 6 months is something that would probably be more like, one of the guys said tonight, probably more typical. But that's there's no small amount of change. That's a
Well,
big, and, you know.
Towards that end,
It's like a
at
thing.
Encina, the thing that caught my eye and ear, they did not have a use it or lose it item for sick pay and or vacation pay, and Kevin was never sick, he never took a vacation. I think he had over 100 days that he was owed.
I think we have district policy already on that,
But
right?
that's between you and your contract with PERS and your employees. That's something that's driven in large part by PERS, okay?
Really?
Yeah, it really is, and that's with your you gotta go back, we'll look into that, and I'll ask Tom about it.
And while you're
But that's
doing
not
that,
something we
let me
normally.
follow up on this, because one of the board members from another district said, is this an opportunity for us to look at the PERS discussion relative to a cap on their pension? I mean, some people, and I know for a fact, there are general managers who are retiring at 110% of their salary.
Right,
And that's because they're 2.5% or 3%.
right.
Whatever. Is this an opportunity
That's
to
part
do
of
that as well?
that's part of your MOU process, because that's the benefit package
That is all part of your negotiations with the
But
employees.
if we have a contract, that's not part of an
The
MOU,
contract is outside of the MOU.
right?
That's
Well,
one of the reasons
Yeah,
why
but
I
it's
go to
also
a
driven by
contract.
PERPA.
You mean as far as, you're talking, what, are you talking about the GM's contract?
Yes.
There probably are some things you can do, but if you've got, you know, typically what you do is, they are this, from a PERS standpoint, have the same benefits that the employees do. So if you're 2% of 55, or whatever the formula is, that's typically what that person will come into. You could cut out some special provisions with respect to vacation and those kinds of things if you want to.
No,
okay?
I'm more concerned with
The
the
accrual
cap.
issue, yeah, and,
And
yeah.
and not the
We need
accrual,
to-
the cap on, you know,
Mike's right, there is a, I don't know what it is offhand, but there is some, that has been part of the MOU in the last few years, and I believe there are some caps that we have, but I'd have to go back and look at it. Those have changed over the last
Yeah, if you could let us know
negotiation
next
period.
meeting.
would you
Yeah.
email or do whatever we gotta do?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'd like to know what that is. I'm jealous,
Yeah.
that's why.
Real quick,
Yeah, you're right.
before we get off the severance, is there language in this severance that, you know, it's one thing if we wake up, like in your example, we wake up one morning and we're just, you know, the warm fuzzies, right, to make a change. But what if can we put language in there if the GM does something that's so detrimental to the, like, they get arrested or something like that,
Yeah.
or, you know, that we don't pay
Yeah,
the severance? for that?
there's for cause and without cause. This is, the severance kicks in without cause. But we gotta be careful because, you know, depending upon how you put for cause in there, that's another discussion, if you will, because sometimes you gotta, you know, they have to take you out of here in handcuffs before. And there are examples of where you could be a bad manager and not make the threshold of a for-cause termination. But that's something we can talk about and try to address, because it does happen where you know, they're not doing it, they're doing it all, you know, and if they're coming in, you know, they're not showing up,
show
they're
50 days a
drinking, or, you know, whatever, then those are things that are typical for for-cause termination. But 95% of this, guys, is gonna come down to without cause. And then that's what you wanna focus on, as to, that's gonna be the pill you have to typically swallow. I mean, I've got a great example of where the Tri-City Board of Directors has just done a terrible job over the years with the CEOs, and those CEOs make a lot of money over there, and they, you know, they try to finagle ways of firing these guys without cause, or for cause, when they have these without cause termination provisions. It's cost them a bloody fortune in legal fees and damages, because they haven't just basically, we're gonna, you know, look at our contract, and if we can negotiate a little bit, we'll do that, but otherwise, you know, that helps your expectations, and not get involved in trying to get funny or be foolish about it, because like I said, I got a great article sitting in my briefcase that just illustrates just the last time they did this. Now they've wised up, and with the most recent termination, they're basically, they're just saying wonderful things about the former CEO, and they're not getting into the you know, food throwing contest, so.
Director Althorpe had a question.
Yeah, back on the point of the GM generally being the same PERS formula, there may be a situation where he comes in and he wasn't in the PERS system before.
That's correct.
January 1st, 2013. and
That's
he would be-
correct.
He would be under the reform,
That's correct.
so, I mean,
You're absolutely right. That would be the package that he or she would be eligible for.
legally, they would have to be under
Yes.
the new formula.
Yes.
Is that the 60% cap, or whatever the heck it is?
It's 2% at 62, I think, is the reform.
2% at 62?
I think so, yeah.
That sounds like a reasonable.
You
I'm not getting any of it.
are so jealous.
I am
Yeah.
so
You are so jealous.
every time that comes up, Dale Mason's face just pops right into my mind. Right into my mind.
Right in the horse.
Yeah, right in the number of them. Or pounding.
Well, great job, gentlemen, great job.
Yeah,
Very, very good process, thank you.
that went pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Went very well. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, we're
Good
adjourned.
job.